The story begins at Delan Royal School. Inside some classroom, the teacher enthusiastically lectured the students below. Everyone, this truly is the era of heroes. 5,000 years have passed since the chronicles of heroes first appeared in the world. During that time, the lower realm has undergone many changes, just as the Delan Royal Academy was chosen as the venue for this year's Lumen entrance exam. Among you, someone will surely pass this exam and be recorded in the chronicles of heroes. I believe the heroes of tomorrow are right here among us. To achieve that, you must, the teacher said excitedly, but at that moment a sudden racket cut him off, making the teacher visibly annoyed. Students, pay attention in class. He then turned his gaze to a white-haired student dozing in the classroom. The noise had been caused by him, sleepyhead, slamming his face onto the desk. Leo, if you think you know the lesson, then let me ask you, what rituals were performed 5,000 years ago for someone to be called a hero? In response, the young teenager Leo scratched his head, stood up and said, roughly speaking, if you make a name for yourself, people will naturally respect you. This is Leo Plav, 15 years old, of the Plav clan. Across from him, the teacher felt his blood pressure rise upon hearing that answer. Then, as if used to it, he sighed and turned to the rest of the class. Sigh. Anyone else want to answer? In response to that, a red-haired student next to Leo raised his hand and spoke. In ancient times, there was no way to receive the gods' recognition. Chosen heroes were selected through rituals. In ancient times, there was no way to receive the gods' recognition. Chosen heroes were selected through sacred rituals. For example, the blood rite. He finished. The teacher didn't spare praise for him. Excellent. Truly the greatest magic prodigy of our kingdom, Gulliver Traden. He paused, then continued to encourage the students. We have high expectations for this year's Lumen entrance exam. Ignoring those remarks, our protagonist Leo, now fully awake after being asked a few questions, flipped open the book in front of him and thought. Back then it was so easy to encounter the gods. The holy rites that honored the great heroes who fought Erebos, the gods granted the lower realm a marvel. That was the chronicle of heroes. But why are they treating me as if I'm invisible? He thought as he closed his book in frustration. Special note, this is the great hero Kyle Reborn, yet he's being forgotten by everyone. Next, while Leo was still lost in thought, the students suddenly clamored toward the windows to look outside, making him curious. They're here. Where are they? Look! Look, it's the Zerdinger family crest. Amazing. It's Celia Zerdinger. The students shouted excitedly like they'd spotted an idol. In the hallway outside, a young woman accompanied by numerous soldiers calmly advanced. Then a school-wide announcement sounded. All students please gather in the auditorium. Without exception, the Zerdinger family is visiting our school. Blah blah. Hearing that, Leo stood up from his seat. Seeing that, his red-haired friend Traden teased, Leo, are you trying to impress the Zerdinger family? You think they'll notice you? In reply, Leo shot him a look like he was staring at an idiot and said, I'm heading out. I'm not interested in that stuff, unlike you. With that, Leo turned and walked straight outside without hesitation. Behind him, Traden felt both embarrassed and angry. I'm not interested either, I just want to see Celia Zerdinger as a rival, he shouted, only to get away from Leo that nearly made him breathe fire. I'm serious. Time passed quickly. The scene shifted to a training ground where Leo gripped a wooden sword to practice. He vowed not to neglect physical training. His body would definitely be stronger in this life. As he muttered that to himself, a voice sounded beside him. What are you brooding about? The words had barely finished when the figure of a woman immediately appeared, executing a sword swing with a look like she was facing an enemy. Seeing this, Leo had no time to ask questions and hurriedly raised his sword to block. Time passed quickly. The scene shifted to a training ground where Leo gripped a wooden sword to practice. He vowed not to neglect physical training. His body would definitely be stronger in this life. As he muttered that to himself, a voice sounded beside him. What are you brooding about? The words had barely finished when the figure of a woman immediately appeared, executing a sword swing with a look like she was facing an enemy. So Leo had no time to inquire and hastily raised the wooden sword in his hand to parry the blow. He was about to explain a few things when the woman before him cut him off. It's been a while since I practiced sword work. You won't get into Lumen with only mediocre talent. This will be the final test. Having said that, she raised the sword again and lunged at the protagonist, forcing him to clench his teeth as he withstood the heavy strike from his mother. Opposite him, the lady, seeing her son's body tremble uncontrollably after a single blow, taunted, Should I be a little tougher? And then, she began to increase the power of each strike, and her attack speed stepped up noticeably, forcing Leo to strain just to barely keep up. After a few dozen seconds, he was panting like an ox from exhaustion. Aren't you pushing me too hard, Mom? Leo complained. Sadly, his words had no effect on his mother. If anything, she complained, We're fighting and you still have time to talk? As she blocked every move. What are you saying? Then she ramped up her strength again and surged forward at a wind-tearing speed. But after delivering that strike, she suddenly recoiled in regret. Oh no! I used too much strength. If Leo can't dodge it then. The lady panicked inwardly, however, not to disappoint her. At the last possible moment, Leo tilted his head and calmly dodged to the side. Seizing the moment while his mother was still startled, he thrust his sword to her throat and gently asked, "Are you okay, Mom?" The lady stood dazed, having been defeated so easily. She wondered just how deep the child's talent ran. After about 2 seconds of astonishment, she sat up, brushed the dust from her clothes, and asked, "Leo, you still plan to go to Lumern, right?" Lumern Academy, that's the human hero academy among the 4 hero academies for different races, where the chronicles of heroes are recorded, is the place where one's record of ability is most highly preserved. Leo thought to himself, and he nodded firmly. Yes, of course. Seeing that, his mother continued cheerfully, "The Zerdinger family is visiting Delan and will be staying at our estate." "The Zerdinger family staying at our house?" Leo asked, full of curiosity. "That's right, I'm not only happy about it, I'll ask Viscount Z. Zerdinger to have them pass the Zerdinger Chief Field technique on to you. With that technique, you'll be strong enough to take the Lumern exam next year." Having said that, she happily ruffled her son's hair, unaware that Leo only chuckled inwardly at her words. "Mom, but I plan to take it this year." Time passed quickly. The scene shifted to the front of the manor. Just as Leo's mother had mentioned, members of the Zerdinger family had just arrived. Stepping down from a luxurious black carriage, the girl named Celia alighted gracefully, though she still wondered, "Why do I have to come here? Why did you choose to stay at a place like this? Why not just book an entire hotel? I just want to focus on the Lumern entrance exam. Why come to some small family's house?" Questions began to form in Celia's mind. Beside her, her Uncle Ziz suddenly spoke up. "Aren't you curious about Leo, the one who said he wouldn't care about the Zerdinger family?" In response, Celia arrogantly brushed her hair and sneered. "Humph. A would-be knight who can't use a chief field isn't worth watching, right?" "My view is a bit different," Ziz murmured. Next, the two of them greeted the manor's hosts. "It's an honor to meet you," both bowing as they spoke. "Welcome, Viscount Ziz Zerdinger," the lady replied. Her name was Raina Plav, matron of the Plav family, and the man beside her was Dade Plav, the head of the Plav clan. "Greet them. Celia, this is Viscount Plav," Ziz reminded, and following his cue, Celia composed herself, placed a hand to her chest, and introduced herself. "My name is Celia Zerdinger. I look forward to your guidance." "Nice to meet you, Celia," Raina said with a smile, thinking the girl resembled her father and uncle. Across from her, Celia studied the matron's appearance and her eyes glazed for a moment. Wait, black hair, red eyes, could she also be from the Zerdinger line? She wondered inwardly, and as if reading her thought, Uncle Ziz nodded and explained, "Raina Plav, she's your aunt." Cut to the receiving room, where Raina and Ziz were cheerfully sharing tea and conversation. Ziz mentioned that he had visited Leo's school before. "We stopped by Delan Royal Academy earlier. It was packed with students, but I heard Leo said he wasn't interested in us and went home." Hearing this, Lady Raina laughed heartily. "The Zerdinger family's formidable reputation is disappointing if that upset you. I apologize on my son's behalf. He only cares about training." Hearing that, Ziz grew curious and asked what kind of child Leo was. In response, the lady affirmed, "Leo possesses an almost unbelievable talent." At that, the Viscount's expression changed and he asked sternly, "Do you truly believe Leo has the right to inherit the Zerdinger flame?" "Not because he's your son, I'm convinced he's more than worthy," Raina insisted once more. Seeing that, Uncle Ziz smiled. "If you've said that, I'm looking forward to it. However, I need to assess the boy's potential myself." Cut to Leo's location. He sat cross-legged as if trying to focus his cultivation. At that moment, a faint, gentle glow began to flicker from his right wrist. And then, Leo snapped his eyes open and whispered, "Finally, the vessel to receive everything is complete. The reason I haven't learned a chi field until now is because the moment a person accepts a chi field, the body naturally adapts to that field and loses the chance to accumulate mana and mental strength. In my previous life, if I had mastered their power and nature more perfectly, if I had handled everything completely correctly, I might not have left behind any hidden talents. In this life, I will fully master it starting with the chi field," Leo told himself. Just then a voice called from behind, "You're Leo Plav, aren't you?" In front. Leo, hearing this, turned around in curiosity. It turned out the person was that girl, Celia. Seeing Leo had noticed her, she unexpectedly offered kindly, "From what I see, your fundamentals are solid. I will personally teach you swordplay. How about it?" Celia said cheerfully, though her real aim was to score points with her aunt, who was Leo's mother. Turning back to the protagonist, he didn't agree immediately but asked, "Who are you?" In response, Celia proudly introduced herself. "I'm Celia Zerdinger, also known by the title of the world's sword maiden." "Oh, is that so? Thanks for the concern, but I have no intention of being taught by someone weaker than me," Leo shrugged, causing Celia to gape in surprise. "Are you saying you're stronger than me?" she asked with a face full of disbelief. Seeing this, Leo clarified further, "Well, in a life or death battle you're stronger because I don't use a chi field, but in a pure sword duel it's a different story," the male lead said confidently as he looked at her face. Celia's expression turned angry. Next, she glanced at the pile of weapons set to the side, and casually picked up a sword from among them and challenged Leo to a duel. "Fine, if you're that confident then fight me." After saying that, she smirked inwardly. "Leo, just because you have a chi field and think you're stronger than me? I'll show you reality's wall." Then Celia proposed the terms. If she won, Leo would serve as her servant for the week they're here. "What if I win?" Leo asked, and Celia declared that if she lost she would be his servant. With that, the two sealed the bet, and Leo quickly grabbed a wooden sword from the ground. "Then let's begin." Saying that, he dashed forward and unleashed a powerful slash at wind-tearing speed. However, Celia reacted just as fast. The moment Leo struck, she swung her sword to block. After the clash, her expression shifted slightly, and she thought inwardly, "His speed isn't bad, but that's not enough," as she thought that she lunged forward to attack, while Leo on the opposite side did the same. And this time Leo was a beat faster, having already swung his sword to strike first, forcing Celia to raise her blade higher to parry. And with the second collision, Celia felt as if she'd been hit by a carriage. "What is this power?" she cried inwardly, and immediately jumped back to dissipate the force of the blow. And that decision was entirely correct, because right after, Leo's sword tip struck the ground and shattered the floor into countless pieces. Back to Leo. Seeing Celia leap back, he rushed in so she would have no chance to counter, and faced with the overwhelming momentum Leo generated, Celia realized she could not stop that attack. Next, Leo launched a swing directly at the sword mistress. However, it was stopped by a protective chi field barrier. "Isn't this supposed to be a pure sword duel?" Leo asked coldly. I was just reacting instinctively," Celia replied weakly. "No matter. I'll still win," Leo said nonchalantly, which made Celia unable to hide the astonishment on her face. "What? The difference between having a chi field and not is like heaven and earth," she cried out. However, Leo merely asked if she wanted to feel it, then unclasped the bracelet on his wrist and tossed it to the ground. Looking at the bracelet, Celia immediately recognized it as a Geotrong magical bracelet. "Insane!" Celia exclaimed. Seeing her stunned expression, Leo offered no explanation and only gave a faint smile. Then he lunged forward and drove the wooden sword in his hand straight into the chi field barrier Celia had formed. And with that strike, even the barrier couldn't withstand it and shattered into pieces. "What is this? So brutal, this madman!" Celia screamed inwardly. Time passed swiftly. The scene cut to Lady Reyna, who was walking around with her younger brother, when she suddenly noticed Leo milling about ahead. Seeing this, she called her son over. "Leo, come out and greet them. They are guests of our family." Hearing that, Leo looked toward Viscount Ziz and bowed. "I am Leo Plav." In response, the Viscount extended his hand and said, "I am Ziz Zerdinger, your uncle, as you may know, pleased to meet you." With that, he clasped Leo's hand firmly. Meanwhile, Lady Reyna next to him asked, "By the way, have you met Celia yet, Leo?" Hearing the question, Leo looked a little embarrassed as he glanced at Celia, who was lying on a stretcher being carried out by the knights. "Miss, what happened? It all happened so fast," the group said in confusion. Meanwhile, seeing his niece lying there unconscious, Ziz hurried over to ask about it. Then the knight quickly explained the cause in detail, and the more Ziz heard, the more incredulous he became. "The boy defeated Celia without using a chi field? Beating Celia, that's impressive," he praised. However, Leo did not revel in the victory, believing Celia had simply underestimated him. Next, the Viscount asked, "What did you two agree on?" And Leo answered, "The loser serves the winner. So Celia Zerdinger will be his maid for 1 week." Turning to Ziz, just 3 seconds earlier his face had still been pleasant, but the moment he heard his niece was to become a servant, his expression darkened like the bottom of a pot. "Promises are important, but Celia is a member of the Zerdinger clan. You can't force her to work like a servant. I want you to cancel that promise. Instead, I'll offer you another reward, for example." Before his uncle could make the offer, Leo interrupted him. "I refuse. This is a promise between Celia and me. As long as she bears the name Zerdinger, she must honor it. Even if I teach you the family's chi field cultivation technique?" Ziz offered. Unfortunately, he did not know the young man before him was a legendary hero, so techniques like that were a dime a dozen to him. Hearing this, Leo snorted. "A chi field technique meant to cover your niece's failure hardly seems worth my study." Up ahead, being repeatedly refused had stripped the pleasant mood from Ziz. Leoplav, you just declared that a direct member of the Zerdinger family will serve as a mate, and said that our family's chi field cultivation technique is worthless. Is that right? Yes, that's right, Leo replied confidently with no hint of fear. Looking at his face, Ziz suddenly brightened and asked, "Don't you think that declaration was a bit rash?" In response, Leo explained his reasons in more detail. "I don't mean to insult the Zerdinger clan, but if Lord Ziz gifts me the family's chi field cultivation technique as a reward for defeating Celia, I will happily accept it, but you are offering that reward as a way to cover up Celia's mistake, which implies you believe that if Celia hadn't lost face, she would not have lost to me. However, even if Celia had taken the match seriously, I still would have won," Leo said with overflowing confidence, which made Viscount Ziz even more intrigued by him. He refused because he disliked the attitude. Quite interesting. If the Zerdinger family had a child like this, with that thought, he waved to the knights beside him and ordered them to escort Celia to the servants' quarters, so she could fulfill her promise. Then he turned back to the protagonist and said, "Leo, just between us, call me Uncle." "Yes, Uncle." Leo nodded in a way that pleased him. Next, after the boy had left, Ziz no longer needed to test Leo's strength. "Sister, you asked me to teach Leo the family's chi field technique, right? I was thinking I could persuade our eldest so Leo can learn the Phoenix breath." Time passed quickly. By the next morning, the scene shifted to Leo's bedroom. Celia, wearing a maid's outfit and blushing with embarrassment, gritted her teeth and said, "For 1 week I will serve as young Master Leo's maid. I am Celia." In the room, Leo was absorbed in reading his book. Hearing her, he glanced up, assessed her, and nodded, saying, "It suits you well, the simple maid outfit paired with your elegant style. This combination is really..." His tone carried an implication that made Celia so furious she trembled. "I know I'm beautiful, but saying it like that is weird." "No, I don't mean to insult you, sorry. I have a friend who constantly praises beauty to excess. Maybe I've unconsciously been influenced by them," Leo replied, then sighed as he recalled something a close friend had said in his past life. "When peace comes to the world, I'll spend my life spreading beauty to everyone." That's what that teammate always told him. Hearing that, Celia calmed down a bit. A friend who truly loves beauty must be wonderful. The problem is they're too sincere. Leo lamented inwardly and remembered an incident when that beauty-loving teammate asked 2 girls in the party to model for a painting. Even strict Rizinat, who carried herself more gracefully than anyone, and Luna for the sake of art, "Could you model nude for me? I even brought a notebook," he asked excitedly, and the reply to that request was a beating administered by the 2 girls in the party. Back to Celia. Seeing Leo clutch the book, she grew curious. "It's like a special training manual. What are you reading?" Leo looked at the book in his hands and said nonchalantly, "This? I read it a lot as a kid. It's the hero's origin." Hearing that, Celia was astonished because she knew it was a fairy tale, while Leo was already 15. After that, Celia began walking forward, scanning all the books lined up on the shelves, and remarked that it seemed he really liked Hero's Origin. Even scholars who study great heroes couldn't compare to him. She marveled at the number of volumes Leo had collected, though he only said he'd gathered them by chance. In response, Celia reached out to take a book from Leo and muttered that especially many of the books were about Kyle. Answering that, Leo's face showed a hint of recollection as he said that among the feats credited to great heroes, some achievements have unclear origins. "I think they might belong to him, contrary to your view." Celia shook her head in denial on hearing that. "He must be a fraud trying to steal the successes of real heroes. That's the common opinion." "Of course I think so too," she added. She then set the book back on the chair. "So you think that about me?" Leo whispered very softly. "What did you say?" Celia asked again because she hadn't heard clearly. But Leo wasn't about to repeat himself and instead shifted the topic. "Then let's start training after breakfast." Turning to Celia, she brightened and asked tentatively, "Young master, if it's okay, may I train with you?" She thought to herself with a small smile, "I want to uncover the secret of your power." Leo agreed at once since he had no real secret to hide about his strength. "It'll be hard to keep up. Are you sure you want to try?" His tone carried some disdain, which made Celia shout in anger, "I am Celia Zerdinger, you know?" But after beginning to train with Leo, Celia realized how intense the regimen was. Not long in, she was drenched with sweat and sitting, panting like an ox from exhaustion. Observing her state, the protagonist casually noted that when endurance reaches its limit, reflexes slow and movements grow sloppy, and you'd expose your back like this. Turning to Leo, she looked at him with suspicion. "Pushing the body this hard, you call this training?" "Yes." Leo shook his head in contempt. "These kids are too weak. Over 5,000 years of development, chi field techniques have improved compared to before, but physical conditioning has been largely neglected. Chi field is the power that optimizes the body's physicality. Ultimately, improving the body also enhances chi field. As a result, they don't prioritize physical training." Returning to Celia. After a short rest, she forced herself back up to attack once more. "Don't underestimate me, you damned white-haired," she said. She lunged at Leo again to strike, but with an attack speed as slow as a snail, Leo simply swung his sword once and easily sent Celia flying far away. And by then she was nearly in tears. Why can't I win?" she cried bitterly. Seeing this, the protagonist calmly approached her and replied, "Frustrating, isn't it? Then take this," he said, handing Celia a Geotron bracelet, and the moment Celia touched it, both her hands were pressed into the ground by its weight. This was a bracelet enchanted with gravity. "Wear it during training starting tomorrow," Leo said, smiling slyly to see someone share in his hardship. Time passed quickly as the scene shifted to an open dirt lot. While the two young people trained, Uncle Z's quietly watched them from behind. To him, this would be a good experience for Celia before entering Lumern. Testing her pride first wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Thinking that, he called out loudly to Leo, "Leo, I intend to ask the family head to let you inherit the Phoenix Breath technique." Across from him, the protagonist couldn't help but startle because he'd heard of this technique before. The Phoenix Breath, the origin of all chi field techniques within the Zerdinger family IV, heard only those recognized by the family can inherit it, Leo thought to himself. Meanwhile, Celia immediately turned and objected. "Father won't agree that easily." In response, Ziz nodded and explained. "Right, so there will be a condition attached. You must pass this year's Lumern entrance exam," he said calmly. But upon hearing the requirement, Celia grew anxious and fearful for Leo. "What? The Lumern entrance is a combat test. Uncle, you know, someone who doesn't use chi field like Leo entering would be far too dangerous." As for Leo, he wasn't frightened by the condition. Instead, he felt an indescribable excitement inside. A real fight. "Huh? Right, I guess I have no other choice." Seeing him thoughtful, Uncle Ziz asked again, "What do you think about that, Leo?" Leo gave a confident nod in reply. "My parents said they'd respect my decision, so I'll take part." His answer didn't overly surprise Viscount Ziz. Just as expected, the boy planned to enter the exam this year. With that added motivation, Leo plunged back into training. "Then let's rest a bit, now continue," he said, returning to his running. "Who says I can't keep up?" Celia shouted. Time quickly passed. A week later, the scene shifted to Deland School. Today was the Lumern Academy entrance exam, and from early morning everyone had gathered to await the test. Celia's arrival naturally drew attention. "Isn't that Celia Zerdinger? Amazing to see the swordwoman in Personhose that beside her?" Curious murmurs rose, while Celia glanced and asked, "Leo, are you nervous, young master?" "Not at all," Leo replied lightly, then used a teasing look to chide the young woman. "Shouldn't you fix the way you speak?" The sudden reminder startled Celia. At that moment a voice called from behind them, "Miss Celia." Hearing it, both of them turned toward the sound and saw it was their red-haired friend Trayden, who was shocked to see Leo standing beside Celia. "Leo Plav, what are you doing here when you don't even use Chi Field?" Trayden asked, then hurriedly greeted Celia. "Miss Celia, so good to see you, how have you been?" Across from him, the two simply looked at Trayden as if he were a fool. Leaving Trayden awkward and unsure what to say next, he finally introduced himself. "I'm Gilliver Trayden. I greeted you when you visited the school before the greatest magic prodigy of Deland." Turning to Celia, before the red-haired youth finished his sentence, she cut him off. "Sorry, I don't remember you at all." "Then goodbye," she said, grabbing Leo's hand and running off. But at that moment another voice rang out, "Celia, long time no see." The voice carried loudly enough to draw everyone's attention in the hall. The owners of the voice were a young brother and sister, both with striking silver hair. The brother Abad Llewellyn, 16, and the sister Chelsea Llewellyn, 14, both members of the Llewellyn family. "Who are they?" Leo asked curiously, and Celia, seeing their appearance, instinctively clenched her hand and explained, "They're the Llewellyn siblings from the heroic noble family of the Gold Empire. They are members of the Llewellyn clan. They're competing in this exam too, so we can't lose, Leo. The Zerdinger family losing to the Llewellyn family is unacceptable," she said, her eyes lighting up like car headlights. "But I'm from the Plav family," Leo replied innocently. Next, the siblings stepped toward Celia and greeted her again. "Long time no see, Celia." In response, the swordwoman nodded. "Indeed, long time no see, Abad Llewellyn." Abad then asked, looking at Leo, "Who is the one beside you?" Answering that, the swordwoman spoke up loudly. "He's a member of a Viscount family in the kingdom of Delrod. Leo Plav belongs to the Plav family." Across from them, the sister Chelsea immediately lost interest in Leo, deeming him merely ordinary. She said coldly, and her brother Abad showed the same attitude. After exchanging greetings, they quickly left, not forgetting to warn Celia. "Celia, the top spot will definitely be mine. Let's go, Chelsea." "Yes, brother," she replied. Seeing their arrogant manner, the swordwoman bristled and complained, Annoying fools, I'll definitely beat them. And she had barely finished speaking when a loud voice rang out that drew everyone's attention. And by their gaze, a young instructor had appeared on the high platform above. It seems everyone is assembled. My name is Albi. The man announced this was Albi Geron, a professor at Lumern Academy. Down below, the swordwoman Celia's expression shifted at the name as she murmured, "Could it be Albi, the mage of the evil eye?" Beside Leo, seeing her surprised look, he asked curiously, "Who is that?" Hearing this, Celia was even more astonished that Leo didn't know the professor. "You really don't know? He's a hero recorded in the Hero Chronicle." Her voice full of admiration made Leo regard the figure more seriously. A person called a hero of this age, the mana in that left eye must be the evil eye, Leo thought as he watched energy continuously spilling from Albi's left eye. Unaware of Leo's thoughts, Professor Albi explained the exam. The tests include fighting other people and killing monsters. Each participant will take part in both sections in turn. "I find this troublesome," he said, and swept his hand, burning the papers in his grasp to ash. Then he pulled a book from inside his robe and began channeling his power, opening the Hero Chronicle Albi's World, chapter beginning the Monster Forest. At that moment, a gigantic magic circle appeared beneath everyone's feet, radiating intense energy. From above, Professor Albi coldly told the group, "I will not tolerate delay. I will group you all together and start at once." Back with Leo, he took the chance to review memories related to the so-called Hero Chronicle. The Hero Chronicle is not merely an archive. Its true value lies in storing the trials that past heroes endured and in recreating the heroes' worlds. Moreover, if one conquers a hero world, one can inherit the powers of previous heroes. It's almost a hero training system. Returning to the present, and waiting until it appeared once more, they found themselves inside a forest with a gloomy hue. Albi's voice echoed from the sky. "This is the Monster Forest. The test is survival. You may cooperate or eliminate one another, do whatever it takes to survive. If you wish to quit, break the orb you carry and return. Only then may you leave." After he finished, his voice vanished, and while everyone still reeled from the forest, Leo sensed a familiar presence. This place was as it had been before Queen of Beasts Silatona corrupted it. It had once been the forest of the Fae. Around them, a few weak-minded students began to panic. "I want to go home," someone said. "It's just an illusion. How pathetic," another complained. However, unlike them, Leo saw things differently. He's wrong. Even though this world was recreated from Professor Albi's memories, everything that happens here is real. If you fall into a life-threatening situation, you'll actually die. Just thinking that, a blue arrow of light shot out from within the forest straight at Leo. Luckily, he was on guard and managed to dodge in time, and the one who had fired that wind arrow was none other than Chelsea. Seeing Leo avoid her arrow, she stepped forward and said, "We've met before, haven't we? It's a pleasure to take down someone from the Zerdinger family," the girl said confidently, and Leo had to remind her of his status. "I'm from the Plav family, but you were with Celia earlier," Chelsea said loudly, and immediately used her wind-cutting magic, forming an energy scythe in her hand. With Leo's experience, he was slightly surprised by the skill. That's a spell that didn't exist in the past, but basically it's unchanged, he thought as he tightened his grip on his sword, ready for anything. Meanwhile, Chelsea, seeing Leo remain calm in front of her, seemed irritated and sighed. "Ha, you're still calm even with me in front of you," she said. Then she spun her scythe in a circle and hurled it forward like a saw. However, the attack wasn't enough to trouble Leo. With a single swing of his sword, he easily knocked the scythe back. Seeing him do it so effortlessly, Chelsea's expression shifted slightly. "He isn't remarkable, but I can't sense any chi field being used. Could it be a hard-to-detect chi attribute?" she wondered inwardly. Meanwhile, Leo made a proposal. "That attack is too simple. Instead, why don't we cooperate? This test favors those who survive longest. As a mage, wouldn't it be useful to have a swordsman by your side?" he suggested with a smile. Unfortunately, Chelsea treated his words like water off a duck's back. "Heh, sorry, I'm a battle mage. More importantly, you said my attack is too simple. Huh?" Her tone was a bit angry. Whether Leo could read her mood or not, he casually admitted, "Be honest, that wind spell is too monotonous in technique power-wise. It's like that." Across from him, hearing Leo lecture her, the girl rolled her eyes. "You're lecturing me about magic? A direct descendant of the Llewellyn family? Then let's see how you handle this simple attack. Wind blade, wind arrow," she said as she waved her staff, firing several blades and arrows aimed straight at Leo. But as she finished the move, she realized Leo had disappeared from his spot. "He's vanished. I can't sense any trace of mana at all. Why?" she panicked, then noticed Leo's figure suddenly appear in front of her and punch her in the stomach, hard enough to make her collapse to her knees. Then I should politely ask you to cooperate, shouldn't I? After that, Leo tied her body to a post and started a fire with a wicked look on his face. Time passed quickly until evening. Chelsea slowly came out of her daze and realized she was tied to a wooden post with a roaring fire burning beneath her. The scene looked like she was about to be sacrificed. What is this? Chelsea cried in panic. Seeing that she had woken, Leo resumed his offer. Are you going to cooperate with me? Chelsea ground her teeth in irritation. Never. I don't need anyone, except my brother Wind Blade, she shouted. She activated her magic to cut the ropes, but at that moment a small red sealing rune appeared on her wrist, preventing her from casting. That's a magic sealing formation, Leo murmured. But because she doesn't have much mana, she won't be able to maintain it for long. In reply, Chelsea said she could easily break that kind of formation. Leo gave a cold laugh. You think I'll let you concentrate? As he said that, the flames began to lick at Chelsea, setting part of her dress on fire. Wait! Stop! It's hot! She screamed, but Leo kept insisting she cooperate. With no other choice, Chelsea had to accept his offer. All right, I'll do it. Leo wasn't foolish enough to just untie her. Instead, he forced her to swear on her family's honor. Okay, I swear on the honor of the Llewellyn family that I will cooperate. Please stop, she said, tears welling at the corners of her eyes. Inside, Leo smiled like a madman, thinking, too easy. She must still be a child. He then yanked the rope, letting Chelsea drop straight down. Leo gently reached out to catch her and, in a warm voice, said, I look forward to working with you, Llewellyn Mage. Cut to the outside. While the students struggled inside, the teachers monitored them via screens to score and evaluate their performance. The more he watched, the angrier Professor Albee became. Truly low-level choosing to compete is foolish. Those who quickly grasp the situation are those two, Celia Zerdinger and Abad Llewellyn. The Empire has a bright future, the young professor remarked, praising them as he watched the pair cooperate to defeat a monster. Albee shifted his gaze to another screen and saw Leo and Chelsea teaming up to fight a giant troll. Wait, isn't that Leo Plav? What he did at the campfire earlier was strange, but convincing Chelsea Llewellyn to cooperate is a big plus. He doesn't have Celia's or Abad's strength or brilliance, but he's an unpredictable wild card, the young professor murmured, watching Leo's feed with interest. Back with the protagonists, though forced to cooperate by Leo, Chelsea couldn't help admiring his skill after seeing it. Having a knight along is really convenient. I'll ask one thing, what kind of chi field are you using? I haven't sensed any mana from you at all, she asked curiously, and the protagonist didn't hide it. I don't know how to use a chi field. Hearing that, Chelsea felt her mind slipping behind the concept. What? How can you do it without a chi field? The essence of things is what matters, and that applies to wind magic too. What do you think is the essence of wind magic? To answer his question, Chelsea simultaneously launched a series of wind-breaking spells, producing razor-sharp blades aimed straight at him, and immediately dismembered a monster that had tried to ambush them. Then she let out a mocking smile. Leo, talking about magic in front of the Llewellyn family is foolish. Hearing that, Leo showed no anger. Instead, he continued to admonish, I praise that power, but the way you use it is completely wrong. Saying this as he quickly stepped forward, and his teacher-like posture earned a grumble from Chelsea. You really are. Before she could finish, Leo suddenly noticed something and signaled her to stop. Wait, stop, he murmured. Chelsea realized why Leo had shouted. Before them were several withered, dry corpses that looked ancient like mummies. She frowned and said it looked like a long dead body. Ahead, Leo said he'd seen things like this before. Now I understand the conditions to pass this test, Leo muttered to himself, but at that moment he suddenly sensed something targeting him. With no time to think, Leo lunged, grabbed Chelsea's body and pulled her aside. His decisive action kept them both safe from a strange ranged attack. Then a few people appeared in the distance. Unfortunately, one said, I want to take down Chelsea Llewellyn first. When Chelsea Llewellyn is eliminated, the one standing next to her isn't notable. The voice belonged to the red-haired Traden, who seemed to have allied with another group of students to remove strong contenders. All right, attack together, he shouted, and the surrounding students surged forward like rabid dogs. But those guys shouldn't fight Leo up close. How could they hope to duel him? Instantly, Leo delivered a punch to the face of one who rushed him, sending the man's body collapsing like a dead dog to the ground. Seeing their comrade fall so quickly, the others panicked and dared not attack recklessly anymore. Support me, Chelsea, Leo called as a reminder. Okay, Chelsea replied, but her body still trembled from the earlier danger. As for Traden's group, after a few seconds they quickly recovered and shouted to one another, What are you doing? Attack now. Following which the whole group recklessly charged again. Unbeknownst to them, the ringleader Traden silently slipped away while they were fighting Leo's group. I can't fall like this. I'll find another way, he told himself and dashed forward. At the same time, Celia, not far off, spotted his figure and headed the other way. And so Celia and Llewellyn encountered Leo and Chelsea. With the students they defeated lying scattered on the ground. Seeing her brother appear, Chelsea cried out with joy, "Brother!" She ran forward to hug Abad, who comforted and checked on her. "Chelsea, are you safe?" Beside them, the swordswoman Celia eagerly asked, "How did you two end up together?" "Ah, I suggested we cooperate. That stubborn one refused to join, so I persuaded her pretty well," Leo said with a sly smile, which made Celia sense things weren't as simple as he claimed. "What are you planning this time?" Celia asked cautiously. Then, for some reason, Leo moved forward and helped each person he'd knocked out to their feet, which made Chelsea curious, and she asked why he was pulling them up. In response to that question, Leo explained that competition wasn't necessary anymore, because they'd conquer this world together. "The monster forest is in an abnormal state right now. Do you see those corpses?" It seemed all the moisture had been drained from their bodies. "That wasn't the only odd thing here. Aren't there supposed to be more monsters in this beast forest?" Leo shrugged and replied, and only after hearing him did Celia realize the problem and shout, "Now that you mention it, I notice it too. It's like something's been feasting on them. Surely a high-level monster must have appeared, scaring the others into hiding." Hearing that, the white-haired Llewellyn nodded in agreement. "I get it. Alby's first achievement will be to slay a high-level monster." No sooner had he finished speaking than the whole group felt a terrible murderous aura concentrating on them, making their faces break out in cold sweat. "It looks like it's already here," Leo muttered. Back with Traden, he was using a light spell to scout ahead. "Whatever it takes, I'll take you out, Leo," he gritted out, before noticing a dark shape blocking his path. Seeing it, the young mage brought his staff closer to inspect the shadow. And then, when he realized it was a corpse, he recoiled and fell back. "What is this?" he shouted. At the same moment, some kind of slime suddenly dripped onto his staff from above, making the mage look up curiously, and then, wishing he hadn't. The sight above him was terrifying. A giant spider staring down at him with hunger in its eyes. Cut to outside the main hall. Some students who had ended the test early because of danger were happily bragging to one another. "I took care of about 15 or 16 of them," the brown-haired student said excitedly. "Same here," the student opposite nodded. At the same time, Professor Alby looked toward them, full of disappointment. "So far, about 500 total have failed." Hearing this, another professor panicked and hurriedly objected. "But Professor Alby, you still have to select around 100 like other zones. There are only 50 students left in the test." In response, the handsome professor didn't change his decision at all. "If they don't meet my standards, I'll fail them all. Principal Callian put me in charge of this exam because he understands that." Then he returned to the monitoring screen showing Leo and thought to himself, "Real heroes are found in hardship. Leoplav, he must have noticed something abnormal in the forest. But can he survive this world?" The teacher wondered. Back with Leo's group, they were regrouping and quickly moving forward. "Damn, it's pitch black," complained a long-haired student in the group. Then Celia, leading the swordsman, suddenly halted and signaled the group. "Wait, there's something ahead. Everyone ready yourselves." She began to focus mana into her blade, which emitted a soft red glow, and very quickly they spotted something holding Celia's form tightly. "What the one behind is the real one," Abad warned. He prepared to cast his spell to attack. But before the magic formed, Leo reached out to stop him and told Traden, "Gulliver, snap out of it, break the crystal now." Hearing Leo's prompt, Traden grit his teeth and smashed the glass crystal in his hand, and immediately his form turned into a beam of light and was teleported out of this world, leaving the giant spider to gnash its teeth in regret, who told the prey to get right into its mouth and then run off. Next, since Traden was no longer a bother, Abad could freely unleash his magic to attack. At that moment he softly shouted, "Wind Fong," and countless razor-sharp wind blades shot straight forward, drenched the giant spider's body in blood. Yet, despite the heavy bleeding, its wounds visibly regenerated at a rapid pace. Seeing that regeneration speed, the group's faces turned ugly. "Wasn't that supposed to be enough? Just as I thought. This is Princess Spider Tarantulia," Leo muttered inwardly. It seemed he recognized the monster's true identity. Elsewhere, the axe-wielding student clenched his weapon and rushed in for melee. "Damn it! Take this!" he shouted. But before his weapon could reach the giant spider, one of its legs slammed him and sent his body flying far away. As for the swordswoman Celia, with no time to tend to the fallen man, she forced out, "I'll finish it in one strike." At once, she began gathering intense energy at the tip of her blade, and when it had charged fully, Celia released that energy forward like a laser beam, instantly piercing through the spider's head. However, one had to admit the spider's life force was terrifyingly strong. Though a hole had been drilled through its forehead, within seconds that gap had regenerated as if nothing had happened. The unbelievable sight left her stunned. "Impossible," Celia said in alarm, and seeing her attack had no effect, The mage Abad stepped up to demonstrate the gulf between a spellcaster and a knight. He declared confidently and cast a spell called Barrage, producing wind blades of devastating force that twisted into the giant spider's body. Yet against the Spider Queen, that level of damage still wasn't enough. All it did was enrage the spider further. Up to now Abad had dealt it the most damage and caused it constant pain, so it began directing its hatred toward him. Seeing this, his sister Chelsea hurriedly used her magic to attack and narrowly save her brother. In the end, he was only slightly injured in the arm. "Are you okay?" Chelsea asked. "Thanks, Chelsea," Abad replied. As for the axe boy, seeing that even Celia and Abad couldn't harm the monster, despair showed on his face. "What is this thing?" he cried in fear, and with his knowledge Leo stepped forward to explain to the group. "This is an abnormal regeneration ability. It's the daughter of Salatna, Queen of Tartarus, a monster from Erebos' army that ravaged the fairy forest." Hearing this, everyone around turned to look at Leo as if he were from Mars. Meanwhile, our protagonist was replaying old memories in his head. The mana in Albi's left eye truly is the mana of the Fairy King. Tarantula rules the cursed wildwood. It destroyed the fairy tribe's forest and bit off the Fairy King's arm during their battle. I thought Luna had slain Tarantulia, but it seems the Fairy King's right arm inside its belly saved its life. More precisely, the limitless life energy from that arm, the Ring of Life. Turning back to the group, they were all fired up with battle spirit. "If this monster is the key to the test, I'll defeat it," Abad shouted. "Who said that?" Celia objected. Then the two of them began continuously using their skills to bombard the giant spider head on. However, watching them, Leo knew this was just wasted effort. It would keep regenerating until your mana was completely drained. Leo warned in a cold tone. "So what do you propose?" Celia asked. Leo said they needed two people to cooperate together. Hearing this, the idiots. Abad flat out refused. "I refuse. I'll be the one with the highest score." "No, I will," Celia yelled. Up ahead, Leo saw the two idiots arguing instead of facing the situation and barked. "If we don't get through this hero realm, everyone will be eliminated." At his words, both of them startled, realized the problem, and hastily stopped their bickering. Then Abad offered his view. "Even if we cooperate, it'll take a long time to prepare an attack strong enough to kill it instantly. But only the two of us, me and Celia, can hold the monster down long enough." Upon hearing that, the swordswoman Celia fell silent, and while everyone hesitated, Leo stepped up to take responsibility. "I'll do it," he said with a face full of confidence. However, Celia didn't trust that for a second. "What? That's basically suicide. He doesn't even know how to use an aura field." "I know, but I can hold it for 5 minutes," Leo said calmly, as if it were no big deal. From behind, the mage Abad anxiously asked, "What if the attack fails?" After hearing that, Leo also said he didn't think that would happen, because fire and wind have always been good friends and work together flawlessly. His words made Celia and Abad turn to look at each other as if they were thinking something. Then, while they were still thinking, Leo hurled himself at the spider, gripping his axe tightly and smashing it straight into its mouth, causing the spider to let out a pained shriek. Back with Leo, seeing that the monster could recover to normal too quickly, he told himself, "Just as I thought, this is the limit if I don't use an aura field." Thinking this to find a more effective stalling solution, he called out to the mage Chelsea behind him. "Chelsea, use wind magic to blow all the weapons around toward me." As he spoke, he jumped to the side to dodge a giant spider leg that had just thrust toward where he had been. Hearing his request, the mage panicked and warned, "If you move that fast, you'll get hurt." "There's no time to explain," Leo insisted. "I'll catch them, so don't worry. Just hurry." "Which weapons?" Chelsea asked. "Any of them will do," Leo replied, and per his request, the mage quickly used her wind magic to send some weapon flying toward him. In front of him, based on the sound of the moving weapon, he could vaguely guess what it was. By that sound, it was either a curved short sword or a double-edged long blade. Thinking that, he drove power into his legs and leaped up into the air, at the same time reaching out with both hands to snatch the two weapons that had been sent to him. Then, using the downward momentum, Leo executed a flurry of sword strikes, chopping the spider's legs into segments. However, under the destructive pressure, his swords only managed a few blows before shattering into pieces. Seeing this, Leo immediately asked Chelsea to send more weapons. Then he shouted loudly, and without needing more instruction, the mage cooperated smoothly, blowing weapon after weapon toward him. Like that, the protagonist began to display his extraordinary weapon skills. He struck the spider so relentlessly it couldn't react in time, and Chelsea watched in astonishment. "He looks our age. But this scene is like a war god," Chelsea thought to herself. Meanwhile, the mage Abad, witnessing the scene, no longer dared to underestimate Leo, so he's not just some nobody, he muttered, turning back to Leo. While beating the giant spider, he also took a small wound on his face. Feeling the warm blood running down his cheek, Leo broke into an excited smile. "I can still feel it. If I can't take down a bug like this, the others will laugh at me in the other world." Thinking that, He gripped the sword hilt tightly and, with all his strength, slashed straight into the creature's body. As a result, after the strike the sword was ruined into many fragments. As usual, Leo asked for the next sword, but Chelsea's face turned horrified as she explained that it was the last sword. The unexpected news left Leo's excited expression dumbfounded. Fortunately, at that moment the swordswoman Celia behind them finished charging her skill. A fierce energy surged from her and she shouted to signal Leo where to dodge. "How about you? You flea of a monster," Celia bellowed, swinging her blade forward and unleashing a terrifying column of fire that struck the spider. Before it could make another sound, it was roasted like a spider kebab, and after it perished, everyone received a notification. World of Albi opening chapter, the wildwood has been cleared. Hearing that, Celia seemed to lose all her strength and collapsed to the ground. "That's it," she exhaled in relief. Then she turned back to Leo and exclaimed, "He really did hold that monster off for 5 minutes. Leo, well done," the swordswoman praised. But before she finished the sentence, the young mage Chelsea interrupted. "Amazing, wonderful, you look like a hero from the stories." "Really?" Leo sighed and asked back, since after all he wasn't exactly a true hero. In response, Chelsea looked at him with the gaze of a fan and said, "That's right, I want to be a battle mage, so I really want to learn more about close combat. It's my biggest weakness. Please teach me." Over here, the swordswoman Celia, seeing Chelsea volunteer to be trained by Leo, began to chuckle at the untrained lambs. "I really hope everyone can experience Leo's training at least once," she said with a mischievous smile, leaving the young mage behind her puzzled. Back to Leo. Ignoring their chatter, he reached down to pick up the ring that had fallen on the ground and wondered, is this the item that dropped? Then, a beam of light shot out from inside the ring, and from that light a tiny figure with wings on its back appeared before him. Looking at the face of the figure opposite him, Leo immediately recognized that this was Prince Silid. "Silid, do you remember me?" "I'm Kyle," Leo asked softly, and the prince replied with a faint smile as if in recognition. Then he transformed back into a beam of light and slipped inside the ring. From Leo's perspective, seeing his friend return to the ring, he thought, it seemed he had become a mana king thanks to the treasure Albi found. He had received the mana eye. No sooner had Leo thought this than the space around them began to collapse, and a strange sound rang out. A countdown to return from the trial area began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As a reward for clearing it, the oath of the Fairy King. A mysterious shadow suddenly appeared before Leo and whispered to him. The shadow's face was concealed by the author. However, when Leo looked at that face, his eyes went blank as if he recognized who the figure was. Time passed quickly, and the scene shifted to a bustling town district. An old man was muttering as he looked at a report in his hands. It seemed the exam in the Western Territory had concluded. This old man was named Alien Bedian. He was a master swordsman and the headmaster of Reborn Academy. And beside him, a woman who looked like a secretary was also troubled by the news. "It's finished? But there are still so many people in the other regions. How many did Master Albi pass?" she asked with difficulty. Hearing that, Alien glanced back over the report and exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, if it's Albi, the number's probably decent. 40 people passed." "Is that a lot?" The secretary sighed. "However, the headmaster already had a plan. Don't be too anxious. I thought maybe only about 10 would pass." As he said this, Alien laughed heartily, leaving the secretary at a loss for words. Then she asked curiously, "I guess Celia or Abad would top the list. So who actually earned that spot?" In response, Alien said it was hard to choose and one person had been nominated to represent the new students. Upon hearing that, the secretary was stunned because she knew how strict Albi was. Professor Albi nominated someone? Surprising indeed. So was it Celia Zerdinger or Abad Llewellyn? That's a name we've never heard before. Unexpected that Albi would rate him so highly. I wonder what kind of student he is. I'll send Leoplav as the representative for the new students. Reason: potential to become a hero. Time passed quickly, the scene shifting to some enormous bathhouse where our protagonist, Leo, was lounging relaxedly inside the tub. Pains like these needed healing through care and time. "Wonderful," Leo murmured softly, leaning his back against the edge, and at that moment, the voice of the mysterious shadow from before echoed in his head. The reward for passing was the oath of the Fairy King. When one passed through the world of a living hero, normally there would be no reward, yet somehow, only I received it. Only me. Leo wondered silently to himself. However, before he could think any further, Lady Reyna suddenly entered the bathhouse, leaving him momentarily stunned. "Mother, is something wrong?" he asked, responding with a very serious expression. Reyna said, "Leo, do you know why I was expelled from the Zerdinger clan? It was when I saved a comrade that I lost the Zerdinger flame. Still, I have never regretted my decision. Leo, I want you to use your strength and talent for what is right, and congratulations on being accepted into Reborn Academy," she said, breaking into a refreshing smile. Time quickly moved on. The scene shifted to a lavish city. This was Lemuria, home to Reborn Academy, and through the spatial portal, Leo's group had arrived here. "You have arrived in the city of Lemuria," Make sure you've packed all your belongings before leaving the gate, a voice reminded. On this side, Leo turned his gaze to a complex of buildings across the river and whispered, "This is the center of the world, Lemuria, and over there is Reborn Academy." Ahead of them, Uncle Z's voice rang out, "Leo, how was the past month for you? Congratulations on passing the entrance exam," he added, extending his hand in greeting, and Leo quickly returned the gesture. "Thanks, Uncle, but what brings you here?" Instead of answering directly, Z's posed a question. "Our clan has been mired in endless debate for a month, do you know why?" Hearing that, Leo guessed the issue and said, "Have they decided on who will inherit the Phoenix Breath?" "Exactly. Even though your sister is no longer a clan member, you are still her son, and the elders were impressed that you passed the notoriously harsh Western exam." Saying this, he produced a golden key from inside his coat and handed it to Leo, adding instructions. "This is the auxiliary space key, open it." Leo held the key before him and twisted it in the air as if unlocking a door. A mysterious grimoire appeared before his eyes, emitting an unusually noble aura. Seeing this, Ziz asked Leo to drip a drop of his blood onto the page. Following the request, Leo quickly bit the tip of his finger and let a few drops of blood fall onto it. Immediately the book burst into a dazzling light. Then strange, obscure script appeared on the pages. "Now only you can read this book. Learning the Zerdinger clan's secret techniques is no easy feat, but I have a feeling you'll master them quickly. Congratulations on becoming a member of the Zerdinger clan," he said, giving the protagonist a confident pat on the shoulder. Next, the scene shifted to a roadside tea stall where Leo and Celia had arranged to meet, while he was still lingering around searching for the other person. Then suddenly he collided with a girl about his age, sending the stacks of books she was carrying scattering everywhere. "Sorry, I wasn't watching where I was going," the girl said in a panic, hastily gathering up her books and quickly departing. Perhaps because she was so rushed, while picking up her things, she left behind a student ID, which Leo spotted. "Chloe Meller, a freshman at Reborn Academy," Leo whispered as he looked at the card. Setting that aside, he quickly moved into a shop. Inside, the swordswoman Celia had been waiting for a while. Seeing Leo finally show up, she couldn't help but complain, "Leo, your late uniforms, textbooks, and a lot more to buy." "Sorry, I had to meet Uncle Z's," Leo said apologetically. Upon hearing this, Celia brightened and asked, "So they've decided then? What was the result?" Across from her, Leo wasted no time showing his ability. Suddenly a pair of fiery wings erupted from his back, radiating a dazzling aura. "Is this how you use it?" Leo asked calmly. Meanwhile, Celia, the swordswoman, was so shocked she dropped everything she was holding to the ground. "No way, it took me 3 weeks to get a feel for this secret technique." "Leo, who are you really?" she thought numbly. You can't blame her. After all, Leo is a legendary hero who, with his experience, can grasp techniques easily without much study. Time passed quickly. The scene shifted to a dock. Though somewhat surprising, the ship appeared to be a modern engine-powered vessel. At this moment, the incoming freshmen were present preparing to depart, staring at the huge ship before them. The group gaped in amazement, glancing around. "Wow, it's massive." Murmurs of awe began to rise, until a professor approached and addressed the group. "Welcome, freshmen. I'm Professor Ayn Alandu, in charge of the Freshman Knights class. We will depart for Lummer now, everyone board the ship," he said, pointing to the vessel behind him. And so the cluster of freshmen quickly boarded the ship, where a dessert banquet had already been prepared for the students to enjoy. As everyone happily ate, a voice suddenly addressed Leo and Celia. "Hey, you two, the couple over there, got a moment? My name is Carr Thomas. I'm from the Kingdom of Moira. From medicines to weapons, I sell everything. Come see me if you need anything while at school." Saying that, he handed both of them one of his business cards. For the record, Carr is an alchemist, which explains his wide array of wares. Opposite them, Celia was still annoyed at being called a couple, so Leo answered for them. "Nice to meet you. I'm Leo Plav from the Kingdom of Dalad." Hearing this, Carr's eyes flashed with surprise. "Dalad? So you passed the Western Regional exam, impressive." Putting that aside, Leo scanned the surroundings and felt that something was off. After all, am I the only one who finds this situation strange? Everything is too peaceful. It feels like something's wrong. In response, Celia sighed and countered, "A warm welcome for freshmen who've passed the exam, isn't that normal?" Hearing this, Carr, mid-bite of cake, nodded. "Yeah, there's no reason they'd be rough with students before enrollment." "Definitely not," he said confidently. However, perhaps because this young man talked a bit too much, no sooner had he finished speaking than the entire ship began to tremble violently, signaling that something bad was about to happen. Then, from the depths of the sea, a gigantic tentacle rose up, and it lunged straight at the ship, cracking the deck in large fissures. Next, cries of alarm began to ring out. "Professor Ayn, help! In another corner, Professor Ein watched the students panic yet calmly sipped his wine as if nothing were happening. "Help you," he said. "You are all students of Reborn Academy, aspiring heroes. When danger strikes, you must overcome it yourselves." As he spoke, he glanced forward at a giant octopus that had just surfaced, its maw filled with razor teeth. The sudden turn of events angered the swordswoman Celia so much that she crushed the pastry in her hand underfoot. Seeing that, Leo swung his sword and severed a tentacle, then hastily called out, "Celia, stay calm." In response, the swordswoman told Leo he should look out for himself. Saying that, she launched her own attack with a blade wrapped in radiant aura. However, immediately the giant octopus opened its mouth and blasted a jet of water straight at Celia, drenching her like a soaked rat. Seeing this, Leo didn't know what to say. "It's just a kraken's natural behavior. It reacts to heat by squirting water. That's basic knowledge," he reminded her wearily, which only made Celia angrier. Elsewhere, an unnamed student had his leg ensnared by the octopus's tentacle and was about to be turned into lunch. "Damned octopus!" Leo grunted and rushed over to save him. Then the two of them each unleashed a move and easily sliced that tentacle cleanly in two. At the same moment, their friend Carr, hiding under a table, watched the two of them coordinate so powerfully, he could hardly believe his eyes. "That's Celia Zerdinger's power top scorer in the Western region, but who is this Leo?" he said, astonished. Before he could say more, an ice-frozen tentacle was hurled straight at him, nearly striking the young man with a stray blow. "Hey, watch out!" he shouted angrily at whoever had frozen the tentacle, drawing Leo's attention. It turned out to be the girl he had collided with earlier. Judging by how she wielded her ice magic, her power was by no means ordinary. In response to Carr's remark, she snapped back, "Why don't you stay back if you can't protect yourself?" Upon hearing her, she complained again, "Why don't you stay back if you can't protect yourself?" Hearing her, he could only bemoan his own weakness. "God, the strong never care if we get dragged into their battles." Having said that, whether out of bad luck or fate, another massive tentacle was flung toward him, as if he had become a magnet for severed tentacles, and this time the attackers were the siblings Abad and Chelsea. "The contest isn't over yet, Celia Zerdinger," Abad called, and she, feeling the same, snapped back irritably. As the students fought the beast, Professor Ein leisurely enjoyed his glass of wine. Pouring another, he murmured, "There are many monsters in the lake leading to Reborn Academy. A kraken is perfect for a welcome party." With that, the young professor narrowed his eyes slightly and surveyed the standout individuals. As he had predicted, the prominent captains, Chun Xia of the east, Celia Zerdinger and Abad Llewellyn of the west, Chloe Muller of the north, Walden Tyden of the south, Duran of the central. The freshmen this year are truly outstanding. But the one who impressed me most is that unidentified freshman. His swordsmanship has not a single wasted move. He moves as if he can predict the kraken's actions. I'll meet him in the Knights class." Thinking that, I couldn't help but smile with some anticipation, and so, with the combined efforts of the most outstanding individuals, even a kraken couldn't withstand attacks from many people and was forced to retreat. Soon after, the ship carrying them to Reborn Academy docked, and the moment they disembarked the group was violently seasick, their faces drained pale. "Imagining I've run out of all my supplies," Carr muttered. Next, Professor Ein lightly jumped down from the ship's bow and told everyone, "You'll be crossing that lake many times, so get used to it quickly. Now we'll move to the enrollment hall." Cut to inside Reborn Academy, at the Elikra training grounds. The freshmen were gathered there, and on all sides a few people watched the newcomers as if to find the outstanding ones among them. "See, I told you, there won't be any ordinary ones. I hope this year brings interesting people." Murmurs and whispers began to spread. Paying no mind to the chatter, Professor Ein announced, "We will begin the matriculation ceremony now. Line up by region, top scorers at the front of each line. The headmaster will speak first." Obeying the order, the students quickly fell into neat lines, and after the formation was set, old Callian stepped forward to speak. "You have come here hoping to become heroes. I have only a few words for you. If you dream of becoming heroes, always put yourselves first and push beyond your limits. Those who cannot do that do not belong here." With that, perhaps from excitement, he raised his hand and smashed the podium before him, shattering it into pieces. This somewhat violent gesture left the students below silent, not daring to make a sound. Not even a single clap. Turning back to Callian and seeing no response to his speech, the old man blushed slightly. "Did I talk too much?" At that, the students snapped back to life and erupted into loud cheers, bringing a smile to the old man's face. However, as if the response was still too weak, the headmaster casually said, "I can't hear anything," and the professor standing behind him went pale. The longer one teaches at Reborn, the more the grand image of the architect gets dismantled. Putting the headmaster's humorous nature aside, the host then continued, "Now we will hear the speech from the representative freshman. The freshman representative is Leo Plav. Please come to the stage." "Hello, Leo was surprised to hear he was the representative, and immediately looked toward Professor Albi. Catching his eye, the handsome professor simply smiled and nodded lightly to signal him. With no choice, Leo had to step up to speak. Luckily, they had prepared words for him. Addressing the professors and students, "We, the freshmen, will enroll at Reborn as proud members of this academy, blah blah, thank you." That concluded the freshman representative speech by Leo Plov, and Leo folded the book in his hands. Then the host, not letting him down yet, turned and asked, "Thank you, Leo. Now tell us what your goals are as the freshman representative." Beside him, Leo immediately guessed the school's intent. They wanted him to rile up those who nearly had this position instead of him, thinking that he, unafraid of anyone, loudly challenged the whole lot of manufactured stars. "Hello, I'm freshman representative Leo Plov. If anyone wants this spot, come and take it, whoever you are," Leo declared with overflowing confidence. The teachers behind him, who 3 seconds earlier had thought he was a model, obedient student, had expected a quiet matriculation ceremony. Time quickly passed until late afternoon. Cut to Reborn Academy dormitories, where the freshmen were led by a guide to their quarters. "You've worked hard today. Starting tomorrow, exploratory classes will begin for about a week. During this time, regardless of the major you plan to study, you may attend any classes you like. During this period, you'll pick 3 subjects to specialize in. That's it. Sleep early so you won't be late for the first class." Back to Leo. Before entering the room, his friend Carr waved goodbye. "Leo, our rooms are next to each other. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow." "Good night, Leo." "Yeah, see you tomorrow." Leo nodded in reply. Then, as soon as he stepped inside, he tossed his suitcase onto the bed and lay down to rest, not even bothering to change his clothes. But of course Leo wasn't that careless. He lay down because there was something he needed to check right then. After closing his eyes, Leo's consciousness shifted into a vast space that resembled a gigantic library, with countless books arranged everywhere. "What I hope to find at Reborn is something hopefully here, my heroic chronicle," Leo thought to himself. Time flew to the next morning. Cut to the dining hall. While Leo was eating alone, Carr arrived with a tray 3 times the normal size, sat beside him and offered, "Leo, let's eat together." Seeing that, Leo didn't mind and agreed, "Sure." No sooner had the words left Carr's mouth than trouble found him. A tray of food was placed directly in front of Leo, accompanied by a shout, "Freshman representative, you said in your speech yesterday, do you really mean that?" The speaker was one of the standouts Professor Ein had noted, Duran Moira of the Central Region. His meal was ordinary enough, except for a small flag stuck into his hamburger for the kids to play with. Opposite him, Leo continued eating as if unaware of Duran's annoyed tone. "Seems my words yesterday were provocative, weren't they?" Leo said calmly. "Well, they were. It's not surprising if a stranger comes and stirs things up." The calmer he remained, the angrier Duran became. Seeing Leo seemingly dismiss his words, Duran's eyes bulged as he snapped, "Don't you know who I am? I'm the captain of the Central Region." Across from them, 2 starving brats ignored him and happily ate, making Duran look like a clown trying to attract attention while someone smeared butter on his face. Finally, unable to hold back his anger, he unleashed a bolt of rage, swung his leg and kicked his tray of food high into the air. Leo's tray was sent flying as well, but that still wasn't enough to trouble our protagonist. With masterful dexterity, his arms moved like machines and caught every piece of food back onto the plates without a single drop missed. He even casually helped Carr beside him catch his food too. Not only that, Leo stuffed a bit more into the hamburger in front of him, creating a burger with the very best ingredients. The double cheese hamburger king throwing away such a precious meal is unforgivable, Leo said with a light laugh. Across from him, seeing his provocation had no effect on Leo, Duran lost it. "I'll pull you off that golden throne right now. I can't stand watching someone weaker act so arrogant," he hissed through his teeth. But before the two could lunge at each other, a large hand clapped over both their shoulders and stopped them. The person was Professor Ein. Regarding their disruption in the dining hall, the professor said coldly, "We'll see about that. One of you is the Central Region captain and the other is the freshman representative, arguing on your very first day at Reborn." Time passed quickly. Cut to the night's exploration class, where students interested in the subject had been waiting for a while. However, Professor Ein said nothing or explained nothing, which made a brown-haired student in class raise his hand and ask, "Sorry, Professor, but class is about to start." Beside him, the swordswoman Celia wondered why Leo still hadn't shown up. At that moment, as if to answer their question, Leo and Duran crawled into the classroom looking as if they'd just run 10 laps around the campus. Seeing his sweat-drenched body, Celia hurried over to check on him. "Leo, what's going on? Did you get into a fight?" Leo didn't offer much explanation to that question, but only glanced at Duran with a look of mild amusement. After waiting for everyone to arrive, the young professor officially began the lesson. "Now that you're all here, let's start class. Welcome. Freshman, my name is Ina Landu, and I'm in charge of first-year nights. Up front, the blonde guy still seemed bitter about the incident with Leo, so while listening he kept shooting lightning glare looks at him, and Carr sensed something interesting was about to happen in this class. Whoa, have they already started a large-scale psychological war? He turned his attention back to the professor, uninterested in the classroom squabbles. The professor continued explaining the lesson. The three sources of mana: magical energy, soul energy, and chi field. Among them, chi field is the hardest to control. Does anyone know why? From the back, the swordswoman Celia promptly answered. Because the chi field reduces mana's flexibility during its transformation. He gave her a look of praise and nodded. Right? While magical energy and soul energy use mana in its raw state, the chi field absorbs mana and processes it to suit the body. Now, can anyone explain how we use the chi field accumulated in our bodies? As he spoke, a radiance began to emanate from his body. And for this question, even Celia wasn't entirely clear. Wouldn't it just happen if you applied a little force? She thought to herself. Finally, with no one else stepping up, Leo answered for the group. Because we use chi field power by burning mana. Seeing that, Professor Ein showed a hint of surprise and nodded. Right, so do you know what the most important factor is when burning mana? Endurance, Leo explained once more, turning back to Ein. Seeing Leo answer questions one after another, the professor's expression gradually changed. Impressive. Leo Plav, have you studied chi field before? No. Leo shook his head, which raised the professor's estimation of him even more. For someone who hasn't been formally taught chi field to grasp its essence like that, thinking that, he smiled lightly and continued. Then let's set theory aside and move the body a bit. As he spoke, he began focusing energy into the soles of his feet. And to the astonishment of all the students, the professor's feet stepped into the air as if he were walking on solid ground. This is the chi field step. The basic principle is concentrating the chi field's power into your feet, and its potential applications are limitless. Time flew by and the students began splitting into groups to practice this miraculous skill. However, it's not an easy skill, so most people still couldn't truly master it yet. Except for the swordswoman Celia, true to her genius reputation, she had relatively mastered the skill, and turned to brag to the protagonist. I'll show you how if you call me sis. Up front, Leo felt too proud to learn this kindergarten-level principle from Celia and said casually, no need, the chi field mechanics aren't that different. Speaking of Professor Ein, he had just noticed Duran's eyes fixed on one direction, and he smiled as if he'd thought of something interesting. Then he clapped to get everyone's attention. Everyone. As you know, there was a bit of disorder this morning. Hearing that, the mage Chelsea, not knowing the situation, curiously asked, Professor, what are you talking about? Turning back to Professor Ein, he called Leo and Duran to stand before him and addressed the blonde one. Duran, Moira, what made you so angry? I'm not angry, he answered, though he didn't dare meet the professor's gaze. Seeing that, I more or less guessed the reason without asking, so he gave them a chance to settle it between themselves, then take it out to the field. Central Region Captain Duran Moira and the freshman representative Leo Plav will race one-on-one to decide who will be the class representative. In this match, you may use your chi field with no restrictions. The professor's words startled the blonde a little. Next, their merchant friend Carr seized the moment to bring out a sign and hype bets. Come on, place your bets. The prodigy of the Moira clan and descendant of heroes, Duran Moira, master of lightning chi field, and the dark horse from the suburbs, the mysterious newcomer who bested the captains of every region and became the freshman representative, Leo Plav. In another corner, students watched the two and whispered, I mean, he's the freshman rep, he should show something. From what I saw when he talked to Celia Zerdinger, it seems he can't even use the chi field step, right? And did you hear what he did yesterday? I can't stand this guy. Becoming Central Region Captain isn't something just anyone achieves. Meanwhile, this freshman rep hasn't proven anything. Doubts began to rise. Ignoring those remarks, Professor Ein saw both were ready and said, Okay, whoever reaches the finish line first wins. Whoever wins, you must accept the result with courtesy. That's the knightly spirit. Getting ready at their marks about Celia, though her reason told her Leo couldn't win, some inexplicable intuition nudged her in another direction. Honestly, Leo probably shouldn't win, but that guy always finds a way to exceed others' expectations. Go! Ein shouted, and immediately both Leo and Duran sprinted forward with all their might. Unsurprisingly, Duran, with his advantage in chi field, shot ahead. I'm going first, rookie, he taunted and launched like a rocket. Watching his speed, people couldn't help but admire. Wow, exactly what we'd expect from Duran, so cool. And the freshman rep. As they spoke, everyone glanced at Leo and shook their heads slightly. Unbelievable. He's really bad, just as predicted. That rep is a fraud. Unacceptable. Meanwhile, the mage Chelsea, seeing no one taking Leo seriously, shouted encouragement. Go, Leo! Back on the track, with his lightning speed, Duran had already covered half the distance. Seeing the current result, Carr couldn't help but worry for his new friend. Duran had reached the halfway point. As for Leo, he of course noticed this too, so when he reached the curve, for reasons unknown, Leo suddenly slammed on the brakes. Then he drove all his power into the soles of his feet and shot straight out of the arena, leaving Celia staring in bafflement, wondering what on earth had come over Leo. To their eyes, the protagonist then kept springing and vaulted up toward the observation platform. He paused for a beat to watch Duran's figure running ahead of him, then concentrated all his strength into his legs and executed a burst of acceleration. His takeoff was so powerful that the floor cracked into countless pieces, and his body hurled forward faster than a rocket. Even as he flashed past Duran, he couldn't resist taunting him. "I'm going first, you slowpoke," and kept going. Before Duran even had time to process what happened, Leo had already crossed the damn finish line. And it wasn't just the blonde. Everyone who had mocked Leo earlier was dumbfounded, shocked to the core. "Did you see that? This is no joke. Duran was supposed to be the fastest among the students, yet he lost to that kid, and I'm sure that kid has never learned the Chi-field step." The group stared at each other in confusion as Leo suddenly accelerated like that. As for the swordswoman Celia, unlike the others, she recognized the technique Leo had just used. It wasn't the Chi-field step but the Phoenix step. In a corner, the scatterbrained pair Chelsea and Carr didn't overthink it. They were simply delighted that Leo had won. Speaking of Professor Ein, with his experience he saw the most. Duran had used his signature lightning Chi-field to boost his speed. I expected that, but that speed was truly astonishing. Meanwhile, although Leoplav was slower, he had better control. He focused all of his fire Chi-field into his legs and produced a formidable aura step and excellent application. "Perhaps a true hero will emerge in this generation," he said with an expectant smile. Meanwhile, after winning, Leo went to greet his opponent. "Good match, Duran. If it had been a longer race, the outcome might have been different," he said, offering his hand. But Duran, annoyingly proud and unwilling to show a pleasant face to Leo, sneered. "Get lost," the arrogant loser said as he shoved Leo aside. Putting Duran's rude words aside, the mage Chelsea ran over to Leo with eyes full of admiration. "Leo, you're amazing. I want to train with you too." And looking at her expression, the young man Carr, oblivious to his own looks, turned to Celia and complained. "Why is she infatuated with him and not me? She should pay attention to me too." To which Celia replied with a look like she was staring at an idiot. "Anyway, class is over now. Everyone, let's head to the cafe. My treat today," Carr cheerfully suggested. It seemed he'd earned a sum from the earlier bets, but Leo politely declined the offer. "Sorry, you guys go ahead." "Where are you going?" Carr asked curiously. "I'm going to attend the summoning lecture," the protagonist replied candidly. Hearing that, the orange-haired friend was stunned that a night school student would attend a summoning class. Why would a swordsman go to a summoning lecture? In response, Celia could only sigh in exasperation. "Whatever. I don't understand what he's thinking either." Back with Leo, as he walked to the summoning class, he was lost in thought. One thing he still didn't understand was why the immortal king had sworn an oath to him as a reward from the world of heroes tied to the power of that world's master. "The reward I received was related to summoning. But Teacher Albi is a pure mage with nothing to do with summoning. Normally I'd get a magic-related skill. And besides, to form a contract with a spirit, I'd have to go to the spirit's land, so right now it would be useless," Leo muttered to himself before he was roused by a girl's voice. "So you came to listen to the summoning class too?" Hearing that, the protagonist turned and found the one calling him was the East Region Captain. Chun Xia, 17, saw Leo had noticed her and nodded in greeting. "Nice to meet you, Leo." In reply, Leo smiled. "Nice to meet you. Chun Xia, just call me Xia," she waved before asking why Leo was here. "I assumed you were a swordsman student, so I didn't expect you'd be interested in summoning." "Well, I'm into spiritual studies," Leo explained casually. "Then we'll be seeing each other a lot," Chun Xia murmured. Then Leo asked if she could tell him which spirit she'd contracted with. Chun Xia didn't hide it and immediately summoned her spirit for him to see. It appeared to be a water element spirit. Next, Chun Xia asked Leo, "You show me your spirit too." "Okay, I haven't formed a contract yet," the protagonist explained, surprising Chun Xia a bit. "Really? Then if you need help later, just call me. I can give you some summoning tips," she offered. "All right, I'll remember. By the way, how old are you?" Leo asked curiously. "I'm 17, she answered. "Leo, you're 15, right? I saw you talking with Celia." Hearing the girl's age, he also mentally exclaimed, 17, she really looks much younger. She even looks younger than Chelsea. Thinking that, he noticed Chun Xia staring at him with a suspicious look. And, like a woman's intuition kicking in, Chun Xia asked suspiciously, "You just thought something rude, didn't you?" "No," Leo said, glancing off in another direction. Leaving that aside, she offered a light smile and said, "Anyway, Leo, I'm really impressed by your match with Duran. Someday, please accept my challenge. In response to which, our protagonist, who never backs down from a challenge, smiled and accepted. Of course, cut to the summoning class. Upon arriving, Leo was a bit surprised by how small the class was, only this few people. Behind him, Chansya answered awkwardly. That's right, summoning isn't a popular choice, and this is an introductory probing class. Though it's still surprising the lesson is held here, the protagonist remarked at the class being held out in the meadow. Then a large dark shadow appeared above them, startling the group. A black dragon, where did that come from? Get lost, a student shouted in terror as the dragon stared down at him. Judging by their frightened posture, a woman's voice explained. It did it because it likes you, kiddo. Nice to meet you, freshman. My name is Yura Marin. I'm the summoning teacher who will guide you this year. Around them, the male students' hearts thudded at the sight of the beautiful, vibrant professor. I'd like to become the teacher's spirit beast. The group wished, not to mention those other guys. Even Leo had to admit her beauty. If Dueno were here, he'd go crazy. Leo thought to himself, recalling his friend's womanizing ways from his past life. Turning to Professor Yura, after waiting for the group to settle, she began the lesson. All right. Recruits, your presence here shows you have some talent for summoning, right? Yes. The group called out in unison, pleasing her greatly. Good, loud and clear. We'll move straight to the practical area. Having said that, Yura turned to remind her assistant, Carlo, a white-haired, bespectacled young man who had brought a griffin to assist everyone. He was the teaching assistant for the first-year summoning class. Then, seeing the transport ready, Yura continued, You will go in pairs. Come on, mount the griffins. And at her words, one student hesitantly raised his hand. Professor, this is our first time riding a griffin, he said with a look that pleaded for help. Unfortunately, that request was completely rejected. All he received was a glare of anger from Yura. Are you saying you don't want to learn my lesson? If you think you can't do it, then go back. With that, she quickly climbed onto her black dragon and immediately flew off, leaving the students below standing there dumbfounded, not understanding what had just happened. In the end, it was the teaching assistant Carlo who stepped forward to urge everyone on. Come on, follow the professor. After that, mounting the griffins turned out to be easier than the students had imagined. Chansya also proactively paired up with Leo. Leo, can I hold the griffin's reins? Seeing this, though the protagonist looked a bit surprised, he agreed. Sure, hold them as long as you want. And so, after getting used to it a bit, the group quickly chased after Professor Yura. And only when they felt the cool sea breeze blowing straight into their faces did they realize how blissful it was to have a mount. They hadn't expected to be riding Griffin's typical Lumern class. Hey, swap seats with me. I want to try flying too. Wait a minute. Cries of contention began to rise. Meanwhile, Chansya on this side was equally excited. I'm a little worried, but it's tamer than I thought. Hearing that, Leo behind her didn't forget to warn her one line. Still be careful. Griffins are hard to control for newcomers. Upon hearing this, Chansya couldn't hide her curiosity. Huh, but it's so gentle. That's because Leo began to explain. However, before he could finish, Professor Yura up ahead suddenly pulled out some kind of whistle and puckered her lips to blow. Its blast was so loud it made everyone uncomfortable, and the moment they heard it, the Gleison's attitude flipped 180 degrees, becoming aggressive and harder to control than ever. Not good. They're not obeying anymore. Why did they suddenly turn like this? Professor, save us. The group panicked and begged for help, but Yura had no intention of budging an inch. Instead, she told these factory school students to handle their own problem quickly. You think you deserve to be Lumern Academy students but don't know how to control a griffin? Control them yourselves, she said. As for the pair Leo and Chansya, the Mount Sudden rebellion left the black-haired girl flustered. Seeing this, Leo gently wrapped an arm around her waist, took her hand, and slowly guided her. Griffins have a very proud spirit. Using force to suppress them only makes them more rebellious. Leo, what are you doing? Chansya asked, her face as red as a ripe gourd. But Leo paid her no mind. Instead, he calmly took the reins and slowly brought this griffin back under control. Come on, he said, and the griffin immediately calmed and shot forward. His speed in mastering the mount earned even Yura an involuntary compliment. Not bad at all. She then turned to her assistant. Carlo, the first-year class representative, is the engineering candidate, right? Hearing this, Carlo hurriedly checked the records and nodded. Yes, so does he have his own griffin at home? How else could he ride so well? She asked further. Carlo shook his head immediately. No, he doesn't come from any noble family with griffins. Turning back to Yura, she felt like she'd just hit the jackpot. This is pure talent, isn't it? It seems we've found a gem. She said this while rubbing her chin with delight. Cut to Summoning Island. This is the summoning department's practice area. Most students were sprawled on the sand feeling seasick after trying to bring griffins here. and while they were still dizzy from the motion, Leo took the opportunity to wander around to see if there was anything interesting. And then, he noticed some kind of fruit nearby and reached out to pick it. Actually, what caught his attention was a feather stuck to the fruit. A star feather? Leo murmured. And seeing his slightly odd expression, Chansha asked, "What's the matter, Leo?" Nothing," Leo said, shaking his head. Elsewhere, Yura didn't even wait for her students to finish resting before shouting, "Stop dawdling and focus. From now on you'll take a practical exam." Hearing the announcement, the group stared and complained. "What? A practical test on the first day? But this is just a trial period. Why test us?" The student with the center-parted hair said, confused, and to explain this question. Then Yura began to enlighten them. "Compared to the other two majors, the path we have to take is much longer. Does anyone here not know that? For summoners, merely knowing how to control mana is not enough. To sign a contract with a spirit, you need harmony with the elemental spirit. And to command summoned creatures, you need the ability to tame them. That's why the number of heroes in the summoning department is smaller than in the other departments. However, compared to other heroes, summoners who reach the pinnacle achieve more miracles. Didn't you all come here to become that kind of hero?" In response, a white-haired girl stepped forward and admitted, "Yes, that's right. What's the test?" Her name was Eliza Herjin, born into the renowned summoner hero family in the north, the Herjin clan. Up front, Professor Yura glanced at her and explained, "This island is called Summoning Island. True to its name, it's teeming with summoned creatures. Because summoning is a weapon for summoners, the test will evaluate your taming ability. The test is simple. Tame a summoned creature in this forest and bring it back. Once tamed and contracted, that creature belongs to you," she said with a smile. The students went wild at the thought of getting a little companion on the island. Wow, this is Lumern Academy indeed. And the group immediately hurried into the forest to find the most suitable pet. As Leo prepared to move off to find a suitable summoned beast for himself, Eliza suddenly spoke to him. "You're the freshman rep, right? Word's spreading that you beat Duran. What can I expect from you in summoning class?" "I'm just doing my best," the male lead replied coolly and strode ahead. Behind him, Eliza stared at his retreating back and furrowed her brows as if a little annoyed. Meanwhile, Professor Yura surveyed the scene and smiled inwardly. It seemed these people would become key players in the freshman year. Time passed quickly. Some students began to bond with and tame their summons, while Leo was still wandering without a suitable target tamed successfully. "Oh, that's the freshman rep, but he has gone too deep into the forest," someone said, and another shrugged. "Let him. If he fails to tame and gets 0, he'll end up back in the cavalry department. Does he think summoning is that easy?" Ignoring the chatter, Leo pushed deeper into the woods until he was sure no one else was around. Only then did Leo take out the feather he picked up when he first arrived on the island and begin using his aura. A fire to burn it. "Ha! Just as I thought." This is Leo chuckled, but before his smile lasted a second, a loud explosion rang out behind him. Elsewhere, at a campsite, Mrs. Reyna was worrying about her son. "Will Leo be okay?" she whispered. Someone brought over a plate of food and shook their head. "It's just the first days of school." "Reyna, are you already this worried?" "Well, surely nothing serious will happen, right?" Reyna nodded and took a cup from the other person, not knowing her son really was in trouble. It was, in fact, an enormous problem. The intense heat, one of the 3 great summons. "A phoenix," Leo said with a dazed expression. In front of Leo, someone's voice began to call out, "Oh, just Zerdinger's kid? I smell Reyna's flame." Replying to the other, Leo's eyes lit with curiosity as he asked, "You know my mother?" At that, the other's voice softened a bit. "Your mother? So my guess was right. Yes, if she has a child, they be about your age." "You ask if I know your mother? Of course I do. I owe Reyna a great debt." The voice belonged to a phoenix bathing in flames. "Her name is Farina, one of the 3 legendary spirit beasts. I owe Reyna a great debt." The voice belonged to a phoenix bathing in flames. "Her name is Farina, one of the 3 legendary spirit beasts." At this moment she looked at Leo with a fond expression and introduced herself. "My name is Farina, Reyna E. Hild." Opposite her, Leo returned the greeting. "Hello, Phoenix Farina. My name is Leo Plav. How are you connected to my mother? You said you've been indebted to her." To that question, Farina took on a look of recollection as she slowly recounted everything. "Reyna saved my summoner, Ellen Lunda. At that time Ellen was exploring a dungeon in Siren. She had lost all her companions and was in grave danger. Then your mother arrived and rescued her. And in the process Reyna lost her radiant flame aura. Without that incident Reyna would surely have become a hero." From Leo's perspective, hearing this made him a bit sad for his mother. Yet he then affirmed, "My mother said she doesn't regret what she did that day." Indeed she be that kind of knight." Farina agreed with a warm smile. Then Leo asked why Farina was present on this island. The phoenix did not reveal her reason, only saying she could not tell Leo. Then she shifted the subject back to him. But you were a knight, are you? What are you doing on this island? Leo said he was studying summoning, which left Farina astonished at his choice. Then she chuckled. Ha ha. How interesting this is fate. Leo Plav, at last I can repay the debt I owe your mother. Reach out and take this, Leo. This is my son. One day, when you become a great summoner, I hope you will form a contract with him. It's a pity for the summoner who was assigned to receive him, she said as she handed Leo an egg that radiated a brilliant golden light. Back with the protagonist. Hearing this, he asked, Can I do that right now? In front of him, Farina looked stunned for a moment, then hurriedly warned Leo. It'd still be too early, you could die. Stop. Oh no, it'd be too late. His readiness to challenge the impossible without hesitation reminded her of Reina. I wish you luck. Returning to Leo, his consciousness was transported into a dark space where a small flame cast a warm light ahead. Seeing that, Leo reached out and gently touched the flame before him, and the moment he touched the flame it erupted violently, engulfing his body in a vortex of fire. The heat was unbearable. This is the Phoenix ire. To forge a powerful flame by burning the body, we must endure this pain every day, a creature that lives by endlessly rebirthing its burning flesh. I understand your pain and share it with you, Leo whispered. Then, as if sensing his thought, the flame gradually weakened and became far gentler. At the same time outside, hairline cracks suddenly appeared across the eggshell. Then it slipped from Leo's hand and hovered slowly in the air. All the flames around Leo were drawn into the egg. Have you succeeded? Farina asked. I did it, Leo replied with a bright smile. Farina rejoiced for him. You are a prodigy. Leo Plav, you will become the greatest summoner in the world. Congratulations on successfully forming the contract. This little one's name is Fiora. I entrust my child to you, Farina said with a smile. Maternal love can move one to tears. The newborn barely felt its mother's warmth for 3 seconds before its mother tossed it to someone else. Opposite him, Leo looked at the form of the phoenix with some doubt. Is this really a phoenix? It looks like a chick. He wondered inwardly. Then the little bird chirped twice innocently and stared at him with curious eyes, confirming to Leo that it really was a chick. Cut to Professor Yura's location. By now, the students had found suitable hosts for their summons and returned to report to her. After glancing over the students, the professor turned to ask her assistant, Carlo, what time it was. Hearing that, the assistant immediately replied, 5 minutes left. Only 4 students remained. No sooner had she said that than heavy footsteps sounded from afar, drawing her attention. The one running toward them was a gigantic black bear. It was Chan Xia's summoned creature. Professor, I'm not done yet, am I? She said. A little ragged. Apparently taming that bear had been a tough struggle. However, the result wasn't bad at all. Even Professor Yura praised her. You tamed a young water bear as an apprentice knight? Impressive. At the same time, the big guy Walden clung to the leg of a giant bird as it landed on the ground. A shadow raven? Yura praised. That's a spirit beast even renowned summoner families struggle to tame. Walden explained he hadn't contracted yet. This is more than good, more than enough. The professor waved her hand. Next, Eliza rode back atop a giant white serpent, causing those around her to gasp. I already formed the contract. My family didn't have one of these, the girl said calmly. Yura recognized the summon and heaped praise. A Gorgon serpent? Wonderful. Beside her, Assistant Carlo reminded, Professor, time's up. Just as the last student was arriving, everyone turned their heads and saw Leo strolling out of the forest. What was more remarkable was the little chick perched on his head. Looking at its appearance, the students couldn't help but snicker. Haha, what is that? He tamed a chicken? What a fool, he must have given up on summoning. Contrary to the students' thoughts, the moment Professor Yura sensed the aura exuded by that chick, her eyes widened. Damn, bastard, that's a phoenix, she muttered. Time flew by. Cut to Professor Yura's office. She had called Leo in for a private meeting. Outside the door, Leo straightened his clothes and knocked lightly. Inside the room, Yura, aware had arrived, said, Come in. I heard you were being sought. Leo asked curiously, All right, please, sit down. You know what? To be honest, this is the first time I've ever seen a phoenix. I didn't even know phoenixes were on Summoning Island, she said. And a freshman forming a contract with a phoenix? That's unprecedented in the Academy's history. I know who you really are, Leo, she said, looking straight into the protagonist's eyes with a serious gaze. Opposite her, Leo swallowed nervously at the thought his identity might be exposed. Though he had done nothing wrong, a hero's rebirth after 5,000 years would inevitably attract attention. However, Leo's worries were overblown, because immediately after, Professor Yura hugged him tightly and praised him profusely. You're a summoning prodigy, an unprecedented genius. I want to praise what you've achieved, But I think your contract with the Phoenix should remain secret. If revealed now, it would cause unnecessary commotion. When the trial classes end, be sure to choose summoning as your primary major. You have the talent to become a summoner hero remembered across ages, she said as she gently patted Leo's shoulder with confidence. Time quickly passed to the next day. At that moment, the ice element mage Chloe was yawning down the hallway when she was spotted by Leo and Car. Your mouth is gonna split open. Chloe. Haha, you look exhausted. Hearing that, Chloe turned around and explained she'd been staying up late studying magic books. At the same time, Leo remembered her student ID and said, "You're Chloe Mueller, right?" "Here," Leo said as he handed her back her ID. Looking at the card, Chloe recalled she'd met Leo before. "Oh, so it was you, thanks, student council rep." With that, the three of them cheerfully headed into class. Today is the trial magic class. "Hey Leo, you're joining the magic class too, right?" Car asked curiously. "Since we're still in the trial phase, I want to take as many classes as possible," Leo replied calmly, making Car envious of his studiousness. "That's great. I only care about magic, so I want only take magic classes." Saying that, Car suddenly lowered his voice and whispered into the protagonist's ear that the frosty woman aims to reach the pinnacle of the magic department. "Her name is Chloe Mueller," he said. He glanced toward the icy woman and realized she was staring back at him. Seeing this, Car felt a chill run down his spine and hurriedly slipped away from his spot. "It's freezing here, I senti it. I think I should move further back," he said cheerfully as he turned. But before he could leave his place, a sharp column of ice shot up from the ground, blocking his path. And of course it was Chloe who did it. "Car, come sit in the front row. You seem interested in the class, so I'll help you," she said, then grabbed Car by the collar and dragged him like a little dog, leaving him to whimper silently. Leo watched the scene and found it rather amusing. At the same time, the mage siblings Abad and Chelsea at the back greeted Leo. A few minutes later, the course instructor entered through the door. His appearance sent the female students into a flutter. "Oh my, he is so handsome," they whispered, ignoring those murmurs. The handsome instructor spoke loudly. "I will teach you magic this year. My name is Len," or, pausing, Len tapped a stack of test papers beside him and reminded them that before starting today's trial class, they would take a theory test on magic. Then, with a snap of his fingers, the test papers automatically fluttered toward everyone. The students, having learned nothing yet, felt their minds go blank at being tested already. "What is this, a test on the first day of the trial class?" someone shouted. To the astonished remarks, Len reiterated, "Yes, if you don't meet certain standards, you cannot join my class. If you're a Lumen student, this level is normal. When you finish the test, submit it to my assistant, Anna." Over on one side, Anna, first-year magic department assistant, waved and called out, "Submit your test to me, everyone." Back to Leo. Looking at the questions on the test, his whole body felt heavy and he kept trembling. This was the first time in the story he'd shown such an expression. Is this really the current trend in magic? Why are the formulas this complicated? He grumbled inwardly. Time passed quickly. Everyone kept their heads down doing the test, and after finishing, they realized the exam wasn't as hard as they'd thought. "This is easier than I expected. But what's the answer to the last question?" "I solved everything except that one," they excitedly discussed. Meanwhile, Leo felt like his brain was about to burst from overthinking. "I only solved one question. I should have studied contemporary magic before coming here." He trembled as he thought and handed his pitiful test back to the teaching assistant. "Well, I should self-study magic," Leo complained inwardly and quickly left the classroom. With his knowledge of ancient magic, attending class would only embarrass him. Back with the handsome Professor Len. As soon as he collected the tests, he began grading on the spot. Over the past century, magic seems to have advanced a lot. Where it once required perfect understanding, now remembering activation conditions is enough to use it. However, this development has lowered the general skill level of mages. Saying that, a burst of light shot up from the palm of Len's hand into the air. Then the scene inside the classroom transformed into a vast, mystical cosmic space. Seeing the sight, the students in the class gaped in astonishment. Len didn't leave them in suspense and explained, "This is the essence of magic I created. I made it from end to beginning. I want you to become people capable of researching and creating your own magic. That's why I gave you this test. 49 questions, 1 point each for simple memorization, and the final question is worth 51 points analyzing the true nature of magic. I hope everyone here will become mages able to solve it." Speaking of Chloe, she looked puzzled as she studied her test. No wonder. That was the only question she couldn't solve. Has Leo given up? I wanted to take magic class with him so badly. What a shame, Chelsea thought regretfully. At that moment, teaching assistant Anna seemed to notice something and hurried to Len's side, whispering, "Professor." One student solved question 50. Hearing that, the handsome professor's eyes showed surprise. Then he burst into delighted laughter. "Ha ha ha, who is it?" For the first time in history, someone scored a perfect result. Please stand up. Who is it? Len's face flushed with excitement, but Anna quickly replied, that student didn't get a perfect score, Professor. Unfazed, Len said it made sense. Seems a few other questions were skipped because too much time was spent on the final one. That's a shame, but also good. Come up here, wait. That's not it. He only solved the final question. Anna's soft reminder wiped the smile from Len's face. What's his name? He asked again. He's student Leoplav, Anna answered. Then student Leoplav, please stand up, Len said as he scanned the students. However, after submitting his test, Leo had already slipped away. Finally, it was Chelsea who explained. Student Leo left after finishing the test, sir. Cut to Leo. He was happily eating ice cream with Celia and telling her about the magic class test, making the swordswoman laugh heartily. So you left after solving only one question? First a chick in summoning class, and only one solved question in magic class. Leo, don't you realize you're doing something off? If you're a student in the night major, you should be focusing on your swordsmanship instead. Hearing that, Leo, a bit annoyed, shot back. So do you want to spar endurance with me? That's a bit. Celia's voice faltered at his proposal. But just then, their conversation was cut off by Professor Len. So you're a night major? Are you Leoplav, the one who dismissed my class? Why did you leave after solving only one question? Did you think they were too easy to bother answering? He said, eyes blazing with anger. Opposite him, Leo didn't want to offend the professor and immediately explained, Professor, I think there's a misunderstanding. I thought I failed the test. Every question except the last one was too hard, so I couldn't solve any of them. I studied magic by reading ancient magic books on my own, so I'm not confident with any modern questions. Turning back to Professor Len, the more he heard, the more his expression shifted, and then, rather than being angry at Leo, he scooped him up like a little cat and said with a face full of excitement, come with me for a moment. Saying that, the professor happily dragged Leo off like a toy, leaving him powerless to resist, and meanwhile, Celia the swordswoman watched in bewilderment, unable to understand what was happening. Is that the theory of magic professor at Lumern? He's a rather odd man, she whispered, eyes full of confusion. And at that same moment, Assistant Professor Anna came running up, out of breath and looking exhausted. Have you seen Professor Len, Celia? Or did something strange happen? She panted, likely from chasing that professor. Hearing this, Celia recounted everything she'd witnessed. He just left here, then suddenly grabbed Leo and hauled him away. On hearing that, Anna's face went into panic as she hurried after them. Oh my God, what is that crazy man planning to do this time? She cried inwardly. Back with Professor Len, he had taken Leo to some meeting room, written a series of questions on the board and demanded, solve these, student Leo. Hearing that, although the protagonist was a bit puzzled why, he quickly set to work, and for Professor Len this was also a test to assess Leo's talent. If he didn't solve the final question by pure luck, then he must have a personal magic system in his head. Now show me. I'll perceive the true nature of... Before the thought finished, Leo stopped what he was doing and turned to say, I've already solved them all. Seeing that, sweat poured from the handsome professor's brow. You solved all these in your head? He asked. Yes, more or less, Leo shrugged in reply, making Professor Len salivate with desire. Finally, he whispered to himself. Speaking of Professor Albee, while he was walking down the hallway, he suddenly noticed Professor Len running straight toward him with a face like he'd just won the lottery. Looking at his colleague's expression, for some reason Albee felt a sudden unease and immediately turned to leave. However, Len didn't let him go that easily. A second later, Len lunged forward, grabbed Albee's ankles with both hands and, eyes shining with gratitude, said, Thank you, Professor Albee. Thank you so much. In response, Albee immediately used his magic to lift Len into the air and warned, This isn't the first time I've seen you act overzealously, but today you've gone too far. Len kept his gushing grin and excitedly shared, He's a genius in magic. Leoplav, the student you recommended as freshman representative. He's truly a prodigy. Hearing that, Albee began to feel bewildered by the remark. Magic? Isn't he supposed to be a knight? No, Leo must become a mage at all costs. I won't let his talent be wasted swinging those pieces of iron. Sending him to the knights is an insult to the field of magic, Len shouted angrily. At the same time, Assistant Anna rushed over. Seeing this, Albee dispelled his spell, causing the mage's body to fall freely toward the ground. Luckily, the assistant anticipated it and sped up at the last moment to catch her superior in time. Thanks, Anna, Len said with a beaming face. We really must get back to class. The assistant snapped through clenched teeth, veins bulging with anger. She vowed to herself that one day she'd kill this madman. At the same time, Leo strolled up from behind. Hearing his footsteps, Professor Albee turned, nodded, and acknowledged him, which made Leo a bit embarrassed. Mages never change over time. They're all crazy. Time passed quickly like that, A week later, the trial classes ended, and our protagonist was lying on the rooftop of some building, absorbed in the book in his hands. The book titled Kyle, the Hero of Beginnings. Is he really a fraud? He closed the book. Leo sighed heavily, disappointed that he couldn't find any useful information after reading it. Meanwhile, in Headmaster Kylian's office, while he was busily working, the 3 homeroom teachers of the magic, night, and summoning classes suddenly burst in together, holding a form to show him. Please look at this. They all carried a petition and ran into his room to show him. Please take a look at this. According to the paper, Leo had registered for all 3 majors, something that had never happened at the academy before. And each homeroom teacher wanted to pull Leo into their class so he would focus on just one major. Even inside the headmaster's office, the 3 kept bickering, making Kylian laugh. Haha. All right, let's see. This reminds me of that fictional hero, the 5th grade hero, also called the Hero of Beginnings, Kyle, the only one in history proficient in all disciplines. Cut to the training track. At that moment, Celia and Chelsea were up and running. Meanwhile, our friend Carr, lounging and being poetic, joked, God, why are they training on the weekend? Leo chimed in to explain. Chelsea asked me to coach her. Then why are they just running? Where are their weapons? Carr asked further. Before Leo could answer, Abad and Chelsea wearily stepped forward for him. It's our endurance. Stamina is an important aspect for a combat mage. That's why we're running. Now move aside, Carr, Chelsea said, waving Carr away like a fly so she could sit next to Leo. As soon as she sat by the protagonist, her expression shifted 180 degrees, completely different from the annoyance she showed toward Carr. It's great to run on the weekend. I miss this feeling. I want to run with you too, Leo. Really? Leo asked, curious. Upon hearing that, the swordswoman Celia spat out the water in her mouth, making Chelsea look at her with disgust. Gross, what's wrong with you? Turning to Leo, he of course understood why Celia acted that way, so he said, Anyway, I plan to run with you. I have to do it properly. I told you I'm not running with you, Celia shouted. Beside them, watching their reactions, Carr curiously asked, What's between you two? Why are you so close? At first I thought you were dating. In response, Carr pointed at Leo and explained to his orange-haired friend, Oh my God, he's my relative, my aunt's son, my father's sister's child. On hearing this, the 2 in front couldn't hide their surprise and widened their eyes. He's from the Zerdinger family? Not exactly. The story's complicated, but never mind. Celia waved her hand, not intending to explain further, and perhaps she didn't fully understand it herself. Turning back to Leo, after letting the 2 girls rest for a moment, he stood up and suggested, All right, now let's get serious. Hearing him, the mage Chelsea got excited. Okay, let's go. Nearby, the alchemist friend Carr, seeing them train, didn't want to be in the way anymore and said, I'll go explore the city of Remeria. Responding to that, the knight Celia turned to him with pleading eyes. Then take me with you. Before she finished, the protagonist dragged her off like a chicken, and seeing her pitiful posture, Carr didn't know what to say. Why have I never had a proper noble in my life? He wondered to himself. Time flew by until placement day. In Class 1-5, the moment the protagonist stepped in, Carr waved him over. Leo, over here. Seeing that, our protagonist walked over and asked, You already knew you'd be in Class 5? There's nothing I don't know, Carr boasted confidently. Then Leo glanced at the mage Chelsea dozing on the desk and exclaimed in surprise, Huh? Chelsea's here too. Looking at how exhausted she was, Carr turned to Leo with a suspicious look. What did you do to her this weekend? Just basic training. Leo shrugged, and Chelsea, hearing that, vowed to herself she wouldn't take part in that kind of training again. At the same time, for some reason a few mocking voices of upperclassmen rose behind Leo. Oh wow, so this is Class 5, the class of suffering. I wonder how many of you will remain after the first term. Pathetic freshman condolences. Heh. They said condolences with no hint of sorrow on their faces. However, they shouldn't have said that because right after, the homeroom teacher of that class approached. Pathetic, HM? I think you two look far more pathetic. Do you agree? The owner of the voice was a teacher who looked like a homeless man. His name was Harid Edmund, homeroom teacher of Year 1 at Lumern Academy, nicknamed the Weeping Coal Wall. At that moment he muttered one word, seats. And immediately the 2 students opposite automatically braced themselves like chairs. The homeroom teacher then sat on the bodies of those 2 while mocking the students in front. Greetings, you useless scum. This is the class for failures, the freshmen with the lowest scores. You must have heard rumors about me, the Weeping Coal Wall. Does anyone here know why I was chosen as this class's homeroom teacher? Hearing his question, the loquacious Carr nervously raised his hand and said, Is it to help us improve our grades? In response, Harid turned to him with contempt. Carr Thomas, a textbook answer from the bottom rungs. Does no one in this lousy class understand the mission of a Lumern Academy student? Hearing that, The mage Chelsea raised her hand to voice her opinion. To conquer the hero world through real missions. Harid nodded in satisfaction at her answer. Yes, exactly that. But all I see are people who will die the moment they step into the hero world. It's better to expel those pathetic creatures who only hold back their teammates and die prematurely. That's why I decided to take charge of Class 5 and why they call me the Weeping Coal Wall, saying that he studied Leo's remarkably calm expression and thought to himself that one might survive. Then, to teach these industrial chicken kids what a cruel world is like, Teacher Harid ordered all of them to change into gym clothes and go out to the field to train. Since it was time for combat class, time passed quickly. Cut to the training yard. Very soon everyone had finished changing and was present. Harid rested to the side, looking like he was on vacation. Let's begin this class, the place to examine and fix the rotten minds you've developed since entering Reborn Academy. What do you think will save you in the real world, where life is taken and given so easily? Answer the question. A pink-haired girl stammered. Isn't it that teammates will protect me? Her name was Nella Carvin, majoring in night, notable, recovery attribute aura. To her answer, Harid shook his head. No, it's your own ability. Only when you hone your skills so they shine through danger can you begin to help your teammates. But are you confident in your ability to protect them? From another corner, an eager hand shot up. I'm confident, Professor. Hearing that, the homeless-looking Harid said in surprise. Oh? Then let's test your capability as a battle knight. Produce a fireball, Eliana. On hearing the request, Eliana confidently formed a fireball in the palm of her hand. But Harid, a bit disappointed, sneered. That's it? With that fireball, I doubt you could even kill an ant. Across from him, of course, Eliana was not that simple. What if I pour more mana into it? What then? She asked. Saying that, she increased the mana in the fireball and split it aside. And to everyone's astonishment, it became two gigantic fireballs, radiating terrible heat that made the surrounding students scramble backward. Seeing this, the group of students couldn't help but gasp in admiration. Not only had it become two fireballs, each had doubled in size. Even Harid had to admit, wow, impressive. Why don't you try hitting that little creature with your marvelous fireballs? He said. Then he used his magic to summon a tiny humanoid spirit. The little spirit shot straight toward Eliana at lightning speed, and for some reason it gently tapped the tip of the mage's nose and then doubled over, clutching its belly with laughter, though not understanding why the tiny creature was mocking her. Eliana the fire mage couldn't contain her anger. Immediately she began swinging the two fireballs in her hands to attack. Yet they couldn't even graze the spirit's cloak. The spirit then flew back to Harid's side, covering its mouth as it laughed at Eliana. Harid, seeing Eliana miss, continued to taunt. What's the point of doubling the number of fireballs if you can't even hit it? Have you understood yet? What you lack is the effective use of skills. You must train your abilities and push past your limits. Have you forgotten? Until you catch this wind spirit, our class won't end. Show me everything you've got, descendants of Reborn. Turning to Leo, though Harid's words were harsh, he completely agreed. The teacher's words might be sharp, but everything he said was true. Let me give it a try. Saying that, he calmly stepped onto the field. Watching his back, Harid said expectantly, All right, Leo Plav. Let's see, are you full of the same lies as that fictional hero Kyle? Or are you truly the first to possess all attributes? Time flew by. The entire class surged forward to try to capture the spirit, but no matter how hard they tried, it toyed with them like a plaything. Seeing this, Leo, who had been watching from the side, began to cloak his body in an aura. Then he channeled the aura into the soles of his feet and executed a burst move, a powerful spring that sent his body lunging forward like a flash. Elsewhere, Chelsea and Carr were panting like oxen from constantly chasing the tiny creature. Damn, he's so fast, how can we possibly catch him? Carr complained. At the same time, Leo used his airstep skill to shoot straight up into the air, and while the little spirit was still playfully teasing the other students in the class, Leo dove down from above like an arrow. But, though it had been slightly off guard, the spirit's reaction speed was far from ordinary. At the last possible moment, it agilely zipped to the side and evaded. Yet this had already been anticipated by Leo. He merely smiled faintly and began to concentrate his aura into a whip-like strand, directing it straight at the spirit, and it seemed Leo was about to complete the trial successfully. But damn it! At that moment, the troublemaker Duran, who'd been hiding God knows where, suddenly dashed out at lightning speed, snatching Leo's achievement in the blink of an eye. At the same time, a homeroom teacher strode up behind him and clapped to draw everyone's attention. Looks like we in Class 1 should teach you a few things. The white-haired, sly-faced man said his name was Sejin. He was the homeroom teacher of Class 1-1 at Reborn Academy. Note, he ranked second in the graduation poll, while teacher Harid ranked first in that poll, so the two of them clearly didn't like each other much. Hearing Sejin's voice, Harid calmly sipped his milk and replied, Oh, is that so? Then you'll teach in my place. In response, Sejin looked at him as if staring at a pile of trash. At the same time, Carr, noticing the Cold War atmosphere between them, excitedly said, "This is a clash between the two pillars of Lumern Academy. They've worked here over 20 years. From what I've heard, Professors A and Yura and Len were all their students." Hearing that info from him, Nella turned in surprise and asked, "Wow, really? How do you know that?" Across from them, Carr's face flushed with excitement as he shared, "I'm always tuned into info, haha." Seeing this, Chelsea in front nearly vomited. Back to homeroom teacher Sejin, he laughed heartily. "Haha, Harid, I don't know what scheme you had when you took charge of the failed class, but I'll find out soon. I propose a match between Class 1 and Class 5, and the event will be Lumern's historical ball sport, Batera." Not understanding what Harid was thinking after hearing the proposal, he jumped up enthusiastically to accept. "As expected, you really are a genius, Sejin. Learning through real experience is best." Hearing this, for some reason Sejin grew a bit anxious inside. "Class 1 will probably win," he said hesitantly, while Harid put on a face of indifference. "That doesn't matter, carry on teaching your class." Hearing that, Sejin could only grit his teeth inwardly. Even the students in the back felt pity for him. Why do I keep losing bets in the graduation poll? Sejin wondered to himself. Professor Sejin looked pitiable for some reason. The students thought silently. Then Harid officially announced to his students, "Class 5. I'll give you an opportunity to train your skills. You will have a Batera match against Class 1. Moreover, if you lose, every one of you will be expelled," the teacher said with a face that didn't joke at all. Hearing the teacher's words, everyone first went dumbfounded. Then, right after, they asked him again to make sure they hadn't misheard. "Professor, are you serious? This is just the first match, and their class even has 3 captains." In response, Professor Harid seemed unconcerned about the disparity in strength between the sides. "All the more reason to try harder, push past your limits. Besides, what is there to worry about when a first-year representative is already in your class? Choose 6 people to represent Class 5 in Batera," he said, glancing at the main character, Leo. Immediately, he began to understand the teacher's real purpose. This was clearly a test, but Professor Harid's attention wasn't because he hated him. Some students lose heart after just 1 week at Lumern Academy, and it's not hard to see why. Perhaps Professor Harid wanted him to revive the spirits of Class 5 students who were close to giving up. So there had to be some way in this Batera match to boost Class 5's morale. Leo murmured to himself, and very quickly both classes began selecting representatives to compete. And as expected, Class 1 picked captains who were the strongest. Seeing the opposing side's strength, the mage Chelsea started calculating how she would explain getting expelled to her family. Noticing her panicked expression, Leo couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? You look scared." In response, the mage explained the situation to Leo. Apparently he had never heard of Batera. "It's probably because you live in the suburbs, but Batera is a combat sport and a long-standing tradition at Lumern Academy." Hearing that, Leo couldn't help but look over at the girl. "Curious, isn't that just a ball game?" he said innocently, and at that moment Carr also cut in to explain. "It's not just a simple ball game. The point is it's an extremely dangerous ball game." Back to the girl Celia up ahead. Seeing the puzzled faces of Leo's group, she covered her mouth and laughed as if reaping a harvest. "Hey Chelsea, why do you look so scared? Haha. Already accepting imminent defeat." Celia's voice dripped with provocation, making Chelsea's eyes roll white. "Angry? Who's afraid of who? Do you think I'll lose to someone from the Zerdinger family?" she snapped furiously. And to boost the group's morale, Leo threw his arm around them and declared, "Don't worry, our class won't lose." Hearing that, Celia ahead clicked her tongue in annoyance and warned Leo, Leo, you two, I'll show you the results of my special training course. This time I won't lose to you, Leo Plav." Back to Professor Sejin. After the two sides finished trading taunts, he stepped forward and said, "Contestants from each class, please enter the arena." Hearing that, Leo turned to his classmates and asked, "Who will go with me?" At the question, the others immediately drew back in fear, but luckily not everyone in the class was cowardly. So the 2 mages, Chelsea and Eliana, stepped forward at once. "I have to teach them a lesson," Chelsea said, cracking her knuckles, while Eliana, wanting to show Harid, added, "If we lose, we'll be expelled, so I'll fight with all my hatred to win. I'll show Professor Harid what I can do." On the other side, the mage Nella and a shy classmate also stepped up. Finally, the alchemist Carr, who had been hiding way in the back, was hauled out by Leo. "Carr, you know the last spot is yours, right?" "But why?" Carr gasped. However, Leo had already decided, so after gathering everyone he reported to the professor, "Class 5 is ready, Professor." Hearing that, Sejin nodded. "Good. Then the match begins now." And with that, he tossed the ball he was holding up into the air, causing everyone on both sides to turn their eyes to the ball. Then, without any warning, Both Leo and Duran simultaneously used their top speed to surge forward and snatch the ball, and in the end, it was Duran, with his thunderous aura, who was a step faster and managed to seize the ball right in front of Leo. "All right, then our class goes first," he said coldly. Meanwhile, as Leo landed below, he hurriedly asked his blonde friend at his side, "Tide, explain the rules to me quickly." In response, Tide, knowing there wasn't much time, began to summarize. "Oh, Baster's rules are simpler than you think. You just channel energy into the ball and shoot it into the goal. You can't use hands or feet. The first team to score 11 points wins. By the way, this blonde guy's name is Tide Markoa from the summoning department." On the other side, Duran began to concentrate his aura to prepare an attack. Seeing this, someone in the crowd shouted, "Here it comes! Get ready!" No sooner had the words left than Duran slammed his fist into the ball before him, sending it deforming, and it shot forward at wind-tearing speed. Seeing that, Leo, who was standing in front of the ball, was startled by its speed and leaped aside to dodge. The rubber ball slammed into the ground and flew straight toward the goal. In Car's astonished, bewildered eyes, seeing that, the students of Class 1 also shouted excitedly, "Duran Moira, well done!" Across from them, the students of Class 5 had begun to look worried, their faces pale. Even Tide showed no confidence at all. It seemed Professor Harrid intended to expel all of us. Beside him, Leo didn't lose his confidence. Instead, he turned and asked, "How do we gain control of the ball?" Answering this, Tide began to say there are 3 ways. First, when the ball goes out of bounds on the opponent's turn. Second, when we catch the ball. And finally, speaking of which, before Tide could finish explaining, Nella's anxious shout rang out, "Dodge!" Hearing the cry, both Leo and Tide turned around at once and discovered, at that moment, the rubber ball struck the mage Eliana directly, causing her to cry out in pain, and the one who just acted was the swordswoman Celia. "Hey, what are you whispering about over there? Can't you focus on the match?" Celia giggled, seeing that Leo and Tide rushed over to check on their teammate, and Tide also explained, "The third rule is you may not attack directly or block an opponent's path." Just now was the third case where a member was taken down after being hit by the ball. The only way to attack them is by using the ball itself. Hearing this, Leo understood the rules completely, then gently reached for the ball and nodded. "Thanks for explaining. Now it's our turn." Back to Professor Sejin. Although the situation seemed to be turning favorable for his class, he felt an inexplicable unease. In Batera, teams with fire users hold an overwhelming advantage due to their high destructive power. And among the houses, the Zerdinger family's fire was the strongest. Thinking this, he spoke to the lazy professor beside him. "You still accept it even knowing Celia Zerdinger is in my class. I don't know what you're plotting, but it'll be very hard for your class to win." Beside him, Harrid didn't reply and just yawned repeatedly. This irritated Sejin. "Speak properly," he admonished, and only then did Harrid open his mouth. "Hey Sejin, do you remember your first student? The child from the Zerdinger house?" Upon hearing this, an image flashed through Sejin's mind and he nodded. "Of course, how could I forget the Queen of Batera?" Seeing Sejin still remembered that person, Harrid smiled faintly and reminded him, "The daughter of that very queen is in Class 5. Speaking of the students of Class 5, realizing their class was already weaker, and now having lost Eliana to injury, they had given up hope entirely. "We're finished. How can we possibly get into Lumern Academy if it ends like this?" At the same time, the swordswoman Celia shot Leo a pitying look, as if she'd finally made up her mind. From her viewpoint, Leo's whole body began to erupt in a fierce flame. "It's coming, watch out!" someone shouted, and right after that, the protagonist summoned all his strength and hurled the ball straight toward the opponent's goal. However, Class 1's strength was no joke. Before the ball could reach their goal, the ice mage Chloe used her magic to form a wall of ice that stopped the ball. "Leo, as long as I'm here, you won't score," she said confidently, yet, at that moment, Leo suddenly appeared right beside her and muttered, "I can score." Then, not giving the opponent a chance to react, Leo gathered power in the soles of his feet and leapt high, straight toward the spot where the ball was trapped inside the ice wall, and he threw a punch into the ball, shattering the ice's hold and sending it flying into the goal. On the other side, Professor Sejin, seeing how quickly Leo reacted, silently praised him. His combat instinct is truly remarkable. Seeing this, Professor Harrid also smiled with satisfaction, and Nella's group seemed to find a bit of hope, shouting in unison, "Leo Plav, let's go, Class 5. Looking at the opponent's lineup regaining momentum, Professor Sejin unconsciously smiled. "Ah, I see, so this is when the Real match begins," and so time quickly passed. Both sides began trading blows and keeping close score, neither willing to yield, when Duran launched another lightning throw, sending the ball straight toward the opponent's goal, and on that throw Carr risked grabbing it with both hands. The lightning aura enveloping the ball immediately made his body tremble in pain. However, at least he succeeded in stopping the ball. Haha. My mana's nearly gone anyway, I'll leave the rest to you, Leo, said the young man, exhausted. Eliana and Chelsea then supported him and helped him off the field. Outside, the onlookers frowned anxiously at the current score 10-10. This is the decisive point, but the opponents are 3 top students while we only have Leo. That's a huge disadvantage. On the opposite side, the Ice Mage realized the next serve would be decisive, so she unleashed everything, preparing to use her full power. I may fail the theoretical magic exam, but I won't lose this time, she declared. With a wave of her hand, she cast some wondrous magic, producing 4 clones of herself around her. Not to be outdone, Celia and Duran enveloped themselves in their auras and ready to confront the protagonist. Come on, Leo, Celia shouted. In response, Leo began to gather power into the soles of his feet. Then suddenly his figure vanished from sight. The 3 were dumbstruck. He's so fast, they murmured, and then, with a startling burst of speed, Leo slipped past Celia, startling her as she realized his true intent. He wasn't going to attack, he was focused on scoring. Chloe, at the back, immediately recognized the situation. Is this an illusion? She thought scornfully, too shallow. Where is he actually? She wondered, and began concentrating her mana through her gaze to locate Leo's real body. But through her sight, all of Leo's images looked like the real thing. At least she couldn't tell which was the true body. This left Chloe stunned, and just like that, Leo's group bypassed her and successfully scored. The magic of the stars. How could a human use the celestial tribe's magic? Chloe thought in shock. Meanwhile, the referee, seeing the result, announced the winner, Class 5. On hearing the result, the 2 students from Class 5 hugged each other and cried with relief. Thank goodness we're not expelled. I was afraid I'd have to go home immediately. Hearing this, Professor Sejin curiously looked at Harid and asked, Expelled? What are they talking about? At that, Uncle Harid burst out laughing. Haha, consider it motivation, right? Elsewhere, Celia, Chloe, and Duran were covering their faces in disappointment. Seeing this, Sejin sighed and went over to comfort the 3. Are you upset about losing? When the match ends, no matter the outcome, you must bow to your opponents. You all did very well to win for your class, to cheer on your friends, and to give your all in the arena, so you should be steadfast and proud. In front, the students of Class 1 heard this from their teacher and looked at him with admiration. Unfortunately, that pleasant moment barely lasted 3 seconds before Herod's mocking laugh from behind ruined it. Ha! Hey losers, come here and finish this. Hearing that, Sejin seethed inwardly, but with no other choice he stepped forward to say a few words. Both classes performed very well. Class 1 demonstrated talent and ability, and Class 5 never gave up until the last minute and overcame every challenge. They recognized their limits and successfully got through difficult situations. I hope you will work and compete with one another harmoniously. So everyone shake hands. Upon hearing this, students from both sides reached out to greet each other. You stretched the match longer than I thought. You had me expecting an earlier loss, Celia said with a laugh. I was going to say the same. You're as stubborn as an ink prince, Chelsea replied. Beside them, Carr smiled and told Duran, but this time we won. Across from them, Duran said nothing and only stared at him, leaving Carr a bit embarrassed. Elsewhere, the mage Chloe was still so upset, she was close to tears over the loss. Then Leo reached out and comforted her. You were great, Chloe. With a bit more experience, you'll definitely become extraordinary. Hearing that, the mage looked straight at him and asked, Are you mocking me? One day I will definitely defeat you, she silently vowed, and she reached out to clasp Leo's hand, and so, time passed quickly. 1 month later, Leo's group sat happily drinking tea together, while Carr, eating like a famished man, asked them, By the way, which club do you plan to join? Looking at his ravenous eating, noble-born Chelsea, disgusted, admonished him to eat more properly. As for Leo, he said he wanted to start a club, and the bold idea surprised Carr. On hearing this, Mage Chelsea excitedly said she wanted to join if Leo formed a club. What kind of club? Carr asked, and Leo frankly shared his idea. A heroes research club. I want to learn more about the forgotten heroes and the primeval hero Kyle. Hearing this, Carr and Chelsea exchanged wide-eyed looks and shook their heads. Kyle? But he's not a forgotten one, he's just a legend. It seems no one will join your club, Carr chuckled. Chelsea immediately realized that if Carr was right, she could be alone in the club with Leo. I want to join, Chelsea shouted. Then suddenly their conversation was cut off by loud shouts from everyone. Wow, they're back. Hearing that, Carr seemed to remember something and hurriedly stood up. Oh, right, today, the day the 5th-year students return after clearing the hero dungeons. And he rushed outside to see. Fragments of the hero chronicle scattered across the world occasionally activate abnormally and create dungeons, places called hero dungeons, and the upperclassmen from Lumern Academy who clear those hero dungeons and collect the hero chronicle fragments must be away for at least 2 weeks, sometimes more than a month. My mother must have gone through something similar, Leo thought to himself. Beside him, Mage Plav looked at the veterans with unabashed admiration. Wow, is this the pinnacle of Lumern Academy? In response, Carr took the chance to show off and began introducing each of them to her. The muscular man to the east is Lee Jamua, the southern woman beside him is Torua Yen, and the pale one with the hood seems to be Ulta. But I don't see that person, Carr asked, puzzled. As if there should be someone accompanying those three. Who is it? Leo asked curiously. The head of Lumern Academy, Student Council President Reese, Carr replied. At that moment, a hand reached from behind, gripped Leo's shoulder, and pulled him away, and by the time Carr turned back to continue speaking, he found his friend's voice had vanished into thin air. Back with the protagonist, the one who had pulled him turned out to be the swordswoman Celia. Seeing her hurried demeanor, Leo grew curious and asked, Celia, what's wrong? In response to the question, Celia said that Leo needed to go with her to the city of Lemuria because the student council president wanted to meet him. Why does the student council president want to see me? Leo asked, eyes full of curiosity. Celia wasn't clear on the reason either and couldn't explain. You're not one to care about school affairs anyway, just go and you'll find out. Celia sighed. Time passed quickly. The scene shifted to a room with Eastern-style architecture. Celia fidgeted, looking around and muttering, I wonder why he asked to meet in a place like this. What? It even smells nice here. Leo shrugged. Then, before they could talk much longer, the student council president arrived, and the moment she saw him, the swordswoman dashed to him like a kitten. Big brother. On his side, Reese lightly ruffled his sister's hair and greeted Leo. Nice to meet you, Leo Plav. I've heard a lot about you. You're aiming to become a versatile hero, right? This was Reese Zerdinger of the Night Department, and he was also the student council president of Lumern. Then, true to form, Reese pulled out a basket of steamed buns for everyone before they started talking. Does this suit everyone's taste? He asked gently. Yes, Leo replied. Then Reese noticed his sister looked a bit anxious and asked, What's wrong, Celia? Celia answered that it was her first time eating this dish. Hence the expression. She then slowly tasted a piece, and the instant she put it in her mouth, her eyes widened and she exclaimed in surprise, Delicious! Seeing her expression, Reese smiled with satisfaction. Haha, this is the restaurant I wanted to bring you to once you join Lumern. He paused, then shifted the conversation to Leo. I didn't expect you'd be the son of that person. Across from him, Leo recognized who Reese meant and asked, You met my mother before? Yes, I met her a few times when she was young, and your aunt was quite famous during her school days. Reese nodded, making Leo even more curious. My mother, to explain, Reese began recounting the deeds of Madame Reina. Yes, she accomplished many legendary things. For example, she once said the dormitory's dessert was terrible, so she rallied all the students and stormed the headmaster's office. So she was the protagonist of that famous incident? Celia shouted. Exactly, Reese laughed, returning to Leo while the others chatted happily together. He quietly assessed the student council president's abilities and had to admit, as expected, he's deservedly the strongest among Lumern students. It seems only a matter of time before he becomes a hero, Leo thought to himself. Next, after everyone finished eating, Reese cheerfully stood and said, Then let's go have dessert. I'll pay. So you all go ahead. Hearing that, Leo and Celia quickly left the table. At the same time, suddenly Reese felt a slight warmth on his chest, so he reached into his coat pocket and took out a glowing piece of paper. Huh, what's this about? Reese whispered. Time passed quickly. Cut to Leo's classroom, where the mage Eliana spoke up. Professor, I have a question. In response, the brash professor propped his feet on the desk and smugly asked, Eliana Layden, let's hear your pointless question. Eliana didn't get angry. She raised her hand and called out loudly, Why haven't we chosen a class representative yet? I heard all the other classes have already picked theirs. Oh, that's true. Tide nodded in agreement. Only when she mentioned it did the professor remember. Class rep? Ah, right, I forgot about that. Saying that, he turned to Leo and suggested, Leo, you do it? Before Leo could agree, the others immediately complained. What? Professor? Shouldn't we democratically elect a class representative by vote? To answer, Harid tossed a half-meter-high stack of papers onto the teacher's desk and demanded, Class rep, take these and sort them out. Seeing the enormous workload, Eliana shrank back and didn't dare say another word. Then the loudspeaker on the wall announced, In a moment we will have a joint lesson on herd research. All first-year students please prepare to go to the auditorium. Hearing this, Leo glanced at the professor and asked, Professor, Should we head there right away? That's the demeanor of a class rep. Harid nodded in agreement. Cut to the auditorium. According to the announcer, students were slowly gathering together, and there, Leo and Harid also spotted the mage Chloe. Her current appearance made both of them a bit curious. Hi Chloe, you look tired. Upon hearing the greeting, Chloe's eyes brightened slightly and she immediately asked, do you have any healing potions left? Could you sell one to me? Seeing that, Kar wasn't stingy and tossed her 2 healing potions, saying, this is all I have left. Beside them, Leo's voice held some concern. It's only the start of the year and you're already pushing yourself so hard? Meanwhile, holding the potion, the mage immediately downed it in one gulp and said she was fine. Looking at the stubbornness on Chloe's face, Kar couldn't help but admire her. Wow, impressive she's top in magical theory, Chelsea added. But I guess Chloe has no choice but to worry. The moment Leo picks up the latest magical trends, he could overtake her in the theory exam. Right? What's wrong with being second? Kar asked, puzzled, prompting Chelsea to stare at him as if he were an idiot. Have you completely lost your mind or what? She's a tower mage. We're combat mages, so it's fine if we're a bit behind in theory. But researching new magic is the core of the tower. Her honor is at risk. You're really a mage, are you? In reply, the alchemist friend said nonchalantly, first of all, of course I use magic to make a living. Survival magic is my pride. In another development, as soon as Student Council President Reese realized the paper in his hand was glowing, he immediately went to see Headmaster Callian to report it. And after hearing the story, the headmaster's expression changed and grew serious. The hero record shard that was damaged had reacted. Did that hero shard actually react? He asked. Reese nodded and confirmed emphatically. Yes, this shard was so badly damaged it shouldn't have been able to react. But it did. Moreover, there were no relics nearby. Hearing that, Headmaster Callian asked further, did it react again afterward? No. Reese shook his head and turned back to the headmaster. With so little information, he couldn't deduce this strange phenomenon. Let's investigate this further. You must be exhausted from returning. Well done. Saying that, he summoned his secretary Elena into the room. He asked her to take this to the Hall of Beginnings. The first-year joint lecture in the auditorium was about to start. Yes, I understand. Elena nodded and hurried to the auditorium. He left the old headmaster behind, still pondering the matter. Sometimes even small shards like this can react. If the person recorded in the Hero Chronicle makes contact, it will react. Cut to Lumen Academy's auditorium. The first-year joint course on hero studies was underway. The instructor was Professor Arshan Nir, who oversaw Class 1-8. Because multiple classes were seated together, the room buzzed like a marketplace, leaving the petite professor flustered. Please be quiet, Arshan requested, but the students' mouths kept firing off like machine guns. Arshan's tolerance reached its limit. At that moment, a shadow of a Chelan appeared behind her, and her personality shifted 180 degrees. Everyone, shut up if you don't want to get hit. You damned brats, who should I deal with first? She yelled, her demeanor completely different from her earlier gentleness. Damn it, you won't listen. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, Arshan suddenly returned to her gentle expression. Ah, finally quiet. Thank you, she said pleasantly. The students above were terrified, so scary. Oh my god. No matter how many times they'd seen it, it still frightened them. Our professor is really terrifying, the 8th class students thought, trembling inside. Meanwhile, Leo watched the rocket-speed personality change in awe. It turned out she was a spirit mage. Spirit mages were rare even in previous lives. Returning to Arshan, once the class fell silent, she drew a dagger and began her lecture. We will start the first-year joint hero studies class. With the emergence of the Hero Chronicle, the reason heroic lineages appeared is this. To open a hero's world requires an object deeply bound to or closely related to that hero. Therefore, descendants of heroes have an easier time opening a hero world. This is why Lumen Academy, the place that preserves Hero Chronicles, has deep ties with those lineages. Although this is political, you could say it's like the relationship between a key and a treasure. Now do you all understand why hero studies are important? Hero studies are important because they help us find clues to conquer a hero's world or better understand them. In your final year, you'll choose a hero to inherit their power and attempt their Hero Chronicle pages. At the same moment, Secretary Elena also entered the auditorium and handed Professor Arshan the paper from earlier. And as had been announced beforehand, the professor happily shared with everyone. Everyone, this is a shard of a Hero Chronicle brought back by 5th-year students from Lumen Academy. Hearing her say that, the crowd gasped in wonder. And not wanting to keep the students curious for long, Arshan gently opened the box. Up front, the students held their breath, swallowing and staring at the small box with curiosity. However, before she could fully reveal it, Arshan suddenly closed it again. Alright, before you experience this Hero Chronicle shard, everyone tell us what goal you want to achieve as a hero. Across the room, the students showed visible disappointment. Next, The swordswoman Celia raised her hand and said, I want to become a knight who surpasses the generations before my family. Oh, that's an excellent goal, Arshan praised. Elsewhere, the mage Chloe voiced her ambition. I want to write a spellbook containing only my original spells. I want to become a support for heroes, Carr declared firmly, and his dream drew praise from the professor. It seems Carr wants to be someone who supports heroes. Wonderful. Turning to Leo, he then stated his goal. My goal is to completely destroy Erebos. His words suddenly silenced the entire auditorium, and after about 2 seconds of silence, Professor Arshan awkwardly said, yes, that's an astonishing goal. Okay, next. Paying no mind to the strange looks around him, Leo calmly sat back down. Meanwhile, some upperclassmen began to mock Leo's dream. Isn't he dreaming way too big? The goal of a first-year rep is. As for Professors Harid and Sejin, after hearing Leo, Sejin glanced at his colleague and asked, What do you think? Chills, he's not the type to spout nonsense, Harid replied frankly, while reflecting on the hero's earlier words. Millennia have passed since Erebos was shattered and sealed, but he has reincarnated many times over the years. Even one fragment's rebirth is enough to bring disaster, and Leo's dream to eradicate Erebos entirely made him feel the matter was far from simple. Back with Professor Arshan, after wrapping up the students' ambitions, she continued. So today we'll read a hero chronicle page recovered from a dungeon. Each class will guess which hero it belongs to, and then we'll learn how to conquer that hero's world. Oh, and by the way, in case anything unexpected happens, the professors from each class will be observing here. So please don't cause trouble. Hearing her say that, the students' heartbeats began racing with excitement. After all, this was the first time we'd touch a hero chronicle so thrilling. Up front, groups of students whispered and murmured, and not wanting to keep them waiting long, Professor Arshan continued. All right, representatives from each class, please step up. Upon hearing this, Leo and the familiar class representatives ran up onto the stage, and Arshan said, 2 hero chronicles were brought back this time. Of course, we'll use only one for today's lesson. The other is a very small shard, but we brought it out so you could see that pieces like this also exist. As she spoke, she set the 2 boxes in front of Leo. Seeing that, Leo casually picked up the small paper in front of him. But immediately after, suddenly a strange event occurred. Everyone received a notification. Hero Chronicle opened. World unknown, chapter unknown. At that moment, a gigantic, highly intricate magic array materialized above the stage. And on the other side, Professor Sejin shouted, It's getting out of control. No sooner had he spoken than their figures suddenly vanished before everyone's eyes. And when they reappeared, the group realized they were inside a strange, unfamiliar world.